everyone, and welcome once again to another exciting commentary podcast. I am Captain Logan, and joining me today is Steve Baxi.
Hello, everybody.
And DanzNewz.
Hey, I'm back.
Hey, it's the original Gotham crew.
It is the OG Gotham crew.
The Gotham Discussions crew. Yeah, we threatened a long time ago to do this. That the three of us would get together and we would do the Dark Knight trilogy in commentary form, and here we are, finally doing it. It's so exciting. We debated back and forth about whether or not we wanted to do Batman Begins, because as a lot of you probably know, I've done this before. I've already done a Batman Begins commentary with Vince all those years ago. See, I said that because Vince hates that phrase, so I like to use it. Every time I bring up Vince, I like to say all those years ago. And we were talking about just starting with Dark Knight, but we decided it would make a lot of sense to go ahead and do this again. And I hope you guys enjoy listening to this, but just kind of for us, so that we've already talked about this movie, so when we get to Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, it makes a lot of sense to just, we'll have a more fluid discussion going all the way through them. So anyway, original Gotham crew, this is very exciting. We're gonna do a full commentary on Batman Begins. So as always, of course, if you've never listened to one of these before, what we do is we talk about the film while we're watching it. You can sync up your DVD, your Blu-ray, however you want to watch it, or Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
Now, when you're listening to this, if it's months down the road, it might not still be, but right
That's
now...
True. Licensing issues and such, we can't be held accountable.
That's right. It's not our fault. We are in no way whatsoever affiliated with Netflix. But anyway, if you want to watch it with us, go ahead and rig up your movie, get it to timestamp 0, past all the menus and all that. You can watch it with us while we're talking, and if you want to listen to it as a podcast instead, we will do our level best to provide a little bit of context as we are going along. Either of you guys want to provide any kind of preamble whatsoever before we get started? Everybody knows what Batman Begins is. Everybody knows it's my favorite superhero movie of all time.
Oh, I'm wishing I had created some sort of clever preamble to go with. No. Steve, you got anything?
I don't have anything clever. This is a movie I've written several papers on, and I almost got one published. So I've seen this movie a dozen times. I took an entire class on the trilogy, so I have many things to say.
You took a college course on the Batman, on the Dark Knight trilogy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So Steve has a whole history on this. I just like repeating that flying on rooftops guy over and over again. Like I've seen that. I just skip back and watch that scene on loop generally. That's the extent of my knowledge with it.
And I mean, I've done a review, and I've even done a commentary before. I even have experience doing a commentary. but you know what Dan has that we don't have? The one thing Dan has that neither of us has ever done is he has done a playthrough of the Batman Begins video game.
I didn't do a full playthrough of that, though. No, it was just the 2 episodes. I suffered through an hour of that game and gave up afterwards. It was Dan's playing it too. Yeah, no, it wasn't terrible, but I was playing in character as, Bat Dance. I play the game. I got lightheaded multiple times playing that just because, hey, I'm going around. I'm gonna jump on you. Wally Pfister did a voice in that game. The director of photography of the Dark Knight trilogy he played a character in the game.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I very seriously considered asking you to just do Batman this whole time, but I didn't figure you'd want to keep it up.
That would be so obnoxious. He's not Batman yet. When does he become Batman? We're half an hour in.
Yeah, but the contrast between that and the very serious philosophical analysis.
Oh yeah, I am definitely going to be the color commentator of this production.
Would have been the most amazing thing. I feel like Steve Baxi could just do a commentary on this.
Oh yeah, probably.
I've contemplated it, but it's a 2.5-hour movie. It's nice to have people.
That's true. That's true.
It's like, I love that. Seems like it's nice to have some other folks to fill in.
Exactly. If I was wearing my suit, and then I'd have like a little pocket square I'm wiping away because I'm all pretentious.
Yeah. If Steve had his way, he would record all of our parts as himself and then just sync them up.
I would send you scripts of, okay, at this timestamp, say this thing.
Exactly.
I want you to talk about Nietzsche, but as Batman.
I don't know. You know what quote came to mind when I said that? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, which is probably in no way his standpoint.
Which is a Wrath of God thing. Yeah.
Who is that?
That's Augustus Caesar and misquoted by Machiavelli all the time. People always think it's Machiavelli who said that, but it wasn't.
Well, as long as a dish revenges a dish best served cold is an ancient Klingon proverb, I'm happy. Anyway,
All right,
we're
well,
watching Batman today, guys.
Yeah, here we go. We're stalling for the 2 hours and 20 minutes we're going to be doing this for. So anyway,
So bad. I'm sorry. We've talked like 2 hours before we even recorded this, and now it's taking us 20 minutes to even start the commentary. I'm sorry.
we keep going. When are we going to get started?
Energizer
Now
buddies.
we're actually in the commentary, and the commentary has not begun
Okay,
yet.
we're
All right,
good.
well, everybody, please press play. Right? Wait for it. Now.
Got it. Loading.
No way. Did it say loading?
No. There was a little buffer swoosh.
I love Netflix subtitles because they have to point out that there's a deep swoosh going around.
Absolutely.
You guys, Steve and I are gonna see he's flying on rooftops, and then we're gonna hear Dan like 5 seconds later go, he's flying on rooftops.
Exactly. That, and it's gonna be garbled by Skype, so it's gonna be.
Hey, Steve, it's the old better DC logo.
Yes, the much better DC logo. Oh, and I love this opening with the bats. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah, I think I love any movie series that has that like just iconic opening shot, because like all the Indiana Jones movies generally starts off on a mountain, or it starts off on the Paramount logo and it turns into a mountain or some sort of landscape. So I liked the Nolan movies having all of those different bat symbols.
Oh yeah.
I love it. Steve's gonna get really deep and philosophical after a while, and I love that the first thing of substance he said is, "Boy, that looks cool."
It's because I'm here, bringing everybody's IQ down.
Exactly. I gotta make up for some jokes somewhere.
You know, I have to say, like when this movie came out, before it came out, I bought the official guide to the movie, and it had excerpts from the script and scenes, including the ending scene and other things. So I already had seen I already knew what was going to happen in the movie before the movie even came out.
Oh, I can't even imagine that, man.
It was pretty bad.
I loved how immersive an experience this was when I first saw it. Like, it was nothing like what I expected.
Yeah. I had to
just suck me in from the very beginning.
Well,
I'm so glad
they published that, because I mean, you look at the toy line and they had Ken Watanabe as Ra's al Ghul. Like, no one knew until the movie.
They were trying really hard. Yeah, but I guess Dan probably knew that already.
I knew it. The stupid official guide, because they had the whole escalation thing in there at the end with the Joker card in there. It was.
Oh man.
Well,
that's worse than playing. That's worse than playing a video game and getting all the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Already.
Well, that and
Steve.
Oh, sorry.
Steve, you know how? I'm sorry, real quick. Steve, you know how you're always saying that Arrow is basically a Batman show?
Yes.
Isn't it kind of funny that like the first thing we see Bruce Wayne get is an arrowhead?
Yeah, really, the first thing.
You know, I really liked. This was Christian Bale's first movie after not Insomnia. The Machinist. And he really bulked up for this role. He was kind of almost a little. I mean, apparently he was really chunky when he first put on all the weight back. But I thought he always, like, his build in this movie was the best out of all the movies. I thought he was a little too scrawny and lean in the other ones. But I mean, not scrawny. Obviously he was built, but he was a lot more like a track runner.
Yeah, he's got the most weight for this movie. I think it's a little bit lower in Dark Knight, and then a little bit higher in Dark Knight Rises, but not as big as Begins.
Yeah.
He is so like determined and focused, and like I wish I had Christian Bale's ability to focus like that.
Well, sometimes it's a curse. Like, he was supposed to do a movie on George W. Bush, and he spent like a month reading into his mannerisms and then didn't make the movie.
Oh, was he cast as W?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was.
Oh, it's like
weird.
It's funny. It's the same thing with Steve Jobs. He was cast as Steve Jobs, and then he dropped out, and Fassbender came in.
And it was going to be a Sorkin thing too. Christian Bale and Aaron Sorkin working together would have been amazing.
Yeah, that would have been.
Yeah, it would have. Wow. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine having that kind of control over your own body.
Yeah.
Where you can be that thin and then build up that much and then say, I don't know, dude, you've gone too far. Now you got to rein it back in.
He's mentioned so many times since then about how he's irreparably damaged his body because of that, though. And sure. It was just, he was at a really unhealthy level.
Yeah, I mean, like, no matter how much mind over matter you've got, your body can only take so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's our first connective thread that doesn't line up with Rises. The world is too small for Bruce Wayne to disappear, which is exactly what he does. You just led with that
right away, did you? Okay. Oh, yeah, that's a really good point.
This is why Steve's here.
Oh, man. Yep, that's true.
Liam Neeson is so good in this part, though.
Yeah, he is.
Pitch perfect Ra's al Ghul.
Guys, this man, Henry Ducard, speaks for a man, Ra's al Ghul. Guys, He's not Ra's al Ghul, everybody.
Um, this might be a good place to start.
It's hard for a guy like Ra's al Ghul to simply disappear.
So small.
This might be a good place to throw this in. But for people that don't know, Henry Ducard is actually a comic book character, which is interesting because he was created by the guy that wrote Batman '89. He was created by
Sam Hamm.
Huh? Yeah, Sam Hamm.
Sam Hamm.
Yeah, he was created by Sam Hamm in the story arc was called Blind Justice, where Batman became blind for a little while. It wasn't a particularly great story arc, but it came out right around the time of '89. And since then, Ducard's got a pretty interesting history in the comics. Like his son was the first major antagonist in the New 52 Batman and Robin book, and Ducard was a really major part of the Robin ongoing back when Chuck Dixon was writing it.
This whole scene is like, it's kind of Nolan's penchant to write outrageously on the nose dialogue. Like,
yeah,
it's just like, here is Batman in a sentence.
Yeah, and it gets much worse at the end with Rachel's speech about.
Oh yeah,
like that's
awful. It's like often what Nolan has to say about characters is said awkwardly by characters. Like it's just kind of, he shoehorns a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, that's my big thing with Rachel Dawes through both the first two movies is that she's not a character; she's just exposition walking.
Yeah, she's kind of us in a way, a little bit, our kind of way into Bruce, because Bruce is so like, I mean, his goals are very clear, but he's a pretty shut off person somewhat.
He's very much.
I do really like the idea, of course, though, of having somebody from his childhood.
Oh yeah,
that's
cool.
That knows what he was like before, and Steve, I'll argue with you a little bit that she does have a worldview and is kind of, that represents like the optimism of how the system can work if we just like believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but when we get to the scene right before he meets Falcone for the first time, she talks about justice as harmony, and there's a lot to talk about there when we talk about Plato's Republic, Book 4, everything about justice as a concept of harmony with the three parts of the state and how they work together. So she's definitely got a worldview. I just don't think she's particularly a well-fleshed-out character. She just kind of says things that thematically line up, and there's no personality that goes with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the farther the movie goes along, I can see why you would wish that we would flesh her out a little bit more. But I think toward the beginning, I don't feel that way so much.
Yeah, not as much in the beginning.
When she's telling Bruce Wayne, hey, you need to kind of back off and look at yourself and realize that what you think is justice is not justice.
Yeah.
And all of that, and I mean, looking at, she's a district attorney. She clearly has, like I said, she has a worldview.
Yeah.
Hey, look, a big door. So I thought that was pretty neat. The whole, this is back when I was super into watching special features for movies, about how the only thing built on that mountaintop was that door, and the rest was CGI. And then it's literally him knocking on that door as a close up, and then it's like, now we're in a soundstage. Like that was when I first kind of learned about that stuff, watching the special features, like how movies were made. It always fascinated me.
And it looks great.
Yep.
And you can't tell.
Seamless.
And what I love about this movie is so much stuff is built and so much is practical that when they do use CG, it's wonderfully well integrated. Yep. You can't tell. I think it's very difficult to go in this movie and tell what. And I think there are some miniatures in this movie, if memory serves.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, with the tumbler and stuff.
Yeah,
later on, and the train and.
But most of what the tumbler does, it actually does.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, like, there's so they built so a lot of the city is built on a soundstage.
Yeah,
like inside of a giant warehouse, and they build it to scale, and that is so cool. And I kind of wish they had done that again later on, because in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, the city looks like a different place. In each movie, it looks like a totally different place.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And part of the miniature stuff, back when Nolan first got the movie, him and Goyer had like this whole plan that they worked out in their garage. And at that point, they also built an entire miniature of everything that they were going to look for in the city, the way the action scenes were going to look, what the car was going to look like, all of that. So it was like almost like a Tim Burton-esque workshop for them before the movie was even starting production.
Are you ready to Batman Begins? It's always interesting when you've seen a movie several times and then you finally watch it with subtitles. And I'm not saying this just this viewing. I've watched this with subtitles before, and you start realizing that sometimes there are things people say that you thought you knew what they said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually that.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, he's Ra's al Ghul is listing off all the different fighting styles he's using. And when he says skilled, I thought he said skilt, like that was some other fighting like
Skilt.
thing that I'd never heard of. Skill. I'm like, what is skill? Like that totally sounds like it could be a discipline. The skilt discipline. I thought that for years. Anyway,
I like that. I like the idea of Roz like not fully understanding Bruce, but like he's had an eye on him for a while, and I just like their relationship so much. And then like the whole League of Shadows thing, like it they sell on how hard it really seems to like.
Oh yeah.
He beat him up the second he walked in. Like your training starts now, the second you walk through that door.
Yeah, and part of it is you see him scale that mountain. You see those shots of him in the snow and wearing those weighted clothes and everything. Like you feel physically exhausted by the time he gets there.
Yeah.
yeah, and it helps that Christian Bale is doing so much of that himself.
Yeah.
Can I say it's master casting Linus Roach as his dad. He's in it so little, but he has a lot of impact.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He seems like almost a mysterious figure to me. Like I'd like to know more about that guy. There's so much going on behind his eyes.
Yeah.
And like he seems like a really good altruistic person. I'm not saying he's mysterious in that like he's hiding some horrible secret. I just mean like he seems like he's a really fascinating
There's a
guy,
light behind his behind his eyes. Like there's it's just like he's there. He's present.
Yeah. And part of that
Yeah, like,
fascination just comes from you miss him as a father figure. Bruce is like 8 years old and he loses his dad, so his dad's got the same mystery he's building for us.
Yeah, and of course, obviously his ideology is so completely opposite of what his supposed father figure in Ducard has.
Yeah.
Especially when he says your parents' death wasn't your fault, it was your father's.
Yeah. Because
he should be like what I'm trying to groom you into.
This episode of Gotham is great.
It is. It's really. I think it is. I think it is so sad later on when you see what's happened to the train.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'll get into this when we get to the train stuff. But the way that Nolan actually uses the train as a more modern trolley car dilemma, and we actually have an emotional investment in the train itself before we get there. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before. I like how this movie uses the jobs that people have traditionally in the comics as like actual character stuff and thematic parallels and things where like in Bruce's father you have a guy that works at the hospital and cares about everyone no matter who they are.
Yeah.
And then you have Ra's al Ghul who obviously doesn't and thinks that anybody that's not part of the solution is part of the problem.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Bruce using the train at the end. Well, not using the train, but Bruce being on the train, and it's kind of almost like a passing of the torch sort of deal, like with the destruction of his the train that his dad helped instill or build or whatever. Like that's where Batman's legend begins, essentially. Kind of like that idea.
And that he's not perfectly his father, he's not perfectly Ducard, he's not perfectly Alfred. He's a mix of all three of them, so you get rid of the concrete symbol of what one of those people were or was.
Yeah.
And once again, Steve, like we're always talking about in the Batman the Animated Series commentaries, there's always something thematic going on with the train.
Yeah. I mean that's been a thing for a while. That's a big thing with Grant Morrison as well. Trains always matter. If you're reading Batman, the train is important.
This is, and Steve might be able to mention others because he's read a lot more Batman than I have, but this for me has always been the single best Batman origin.
Yes.
Even going to this and the death of the parents, because this is the one place I have most bought Bruce Wayne actually feeling responsible for his parents' death.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was directly his fault. Like he wanted to leave the theater.
Yeah, he wanted to leave the theater,
and it was because of the bats.
And the bats. I mean, just the way it pulls all that stuff together is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I love that. This whole movie is supposed to be, about fear. And, his last line to him is, "Don't be afraid."
Don't be afraid. Yep. I talked about that a lot when I did the rewind.
That's, oh,
I mean, that's all I focused on.
Gear
you know
one.
what?
Sorry, that shot.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that shot. That is so
I mean,
great.
when I did the rewind, and at the time that was my longest one, which is hilarious now. But 23 minutes I spent on this movie, and that's about all I talked about.
Yeah.
It's just the theme of fear. You go any farther, and you start looking at other stuff, and it turns into a 2-hour review.
Yeah. Oh, Gary Oldman was the perfect Commissioner Gordon.
And you wouldn't think that just looking at him in other things. And
he's always a bad guy. He's always just that eccentric villain, and he plays such a down to earth, beat cop at the beginning. But I mean, it's kind of that year one thing.
And a lot of the time, and Steve, tell me if I'm wrong about that. Maybe this had been a thing in the comics before, where Gordon actually meets Bruce Wayne this night. I'm sure that was someplace. We do it all the darn time.
Yeah,
now.
we do. Yeah, we do it all the time now. As far as I can remember, it was never a big thing. Because before this movie, everyone just kind of ran with the year one thing of Gordon moves to Gotham after Batman's about to get started, so they didn't have like a childhood connection.
Although, what's really interesting? Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. That's Robin's origin. I was gonna say they do it that way in Batman Forever, but that's actually Robin's origin.
Yeah. In Batman Forever, they got there with Robin.
Man,
Gordon's weird because Gordon's like the oldest Batman ally ever, but he's a completely different character before year one. There's like 60 years of that character meaning nothing.
Oh yeah, he's always just kind of a plot device where you got to have the cop guy that works with Batman.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge that there are cops in the city, and that Batman doesn't just come in and do everything for them.
Yeah.
Which is what the '60s show is all about. That he's built a culture of dependency, and they don't know what to do without him.
So, Cap, you mentioned in your Dark Knight rewind, like how this scene parallels the one we get later in Dark Knight with Rachel's death. I'm not sure how much of that was intentional, but it's definitely brilliant when you think about it.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that's they did on purpose either, but there's a lot of direct callbacks in the dialogue.
Yeah,
him and him alone, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yes.
I never noticed it until you pointed it out the first time.
I never noticed it until right now. And I watched Dark Knight just the other day. So, I wanted to point out somebody had a really messed up umbrella in one of those, one of the far off shots. Somebody's umbrella must got picked up by the wind and got broken or something. That, and I wanted to make a reference to the sometimes it's just a simple kindness, like putting a coat on a young child.
Oh my God, I hated that.
We're doing all three of them. Let's not bash Rises that much till we actually get to it. Yeah.
Hey, I'm on the good end of Rises until we watch it. So I liked Rises. So we'll see.
And you're the one. And you're already Dan. You've got like nothing to lose here because you are losing me subscribers right now.
Why?
Thanks, Dan.
Because
there's a lot of people that hate it when I complain about Rises.
Yeah.
I'm negative about it at all, but
you make good points though. Like I've watched reviewers who crap all over Rises and they didn't have any good points. Like
I like things about it. I just think overall, I don't want to talk about that right now because we're gonna do a full what is that movie? 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We're gonna do
this montage sequence is great.
When I first saw this, one of the coolest things where this movie started to really get me was Ducard already has the Bat Gauntlets.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think that there are really clever and really, really just smart and believable origins for all the Batman stuff.
It's Nolan.
And what's great about it is it doesn't. And I was going to talk about this and the reason I brought up Gordon being there the night that Bruce's parents die is a lot of that stuff in a less smartly written and executed thing would feel like it was really gimmicky, and it doesn't in this.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of that is like kind of prequel fodder stuff where it's like, oh, see, look, he knew Gordon already. Isn't that ironic or whatever?
Yeah.
That's not the correct use of ironic, but people would be like, oh, look, it's ironic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't most of it, if any of it, doesn't come off that way to me.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really clever how they utilize it. Like, the way Ducard uses the Bat Gauntlets in combat, it's actually very practical, and it serves a purpose.
Yeah, you understand why it's got spike, and it's not just spikes that jet out. They come out and then jet a different direction, so you can lock on to things with it.
Yeah. It's not like the Silver Age comics where you can just pull the three of them off and make a Batarang. Interesting thing about this scene, while they were filming this on that day, everyone was really worried about that ice. When they came out the next morning, the whole thing was just gone and it was nothing but water.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we almost got the thing where both of them actually fell into the freezing water.
Oh yeah.
Which is amazing. So that's amazing. I mean, like what they're actually going through, they're almost maybe going to have to actually go through.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, I was also going to say that about, we were talking earlier about Christian Bale bulking up and then having to come back a little bit. I mean, like in a way, he ends up having to, go through or decides to go through some of what Bruce Wayne in this movie is actually doing, where you've got to have that kind of discipline, where you seem almost godlike. It's something you would think is impossible, and you get this mind over matter thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So much of this goes back to the line Ducard has a little bit earlier. Did we miss it? I'm not sure if we missed it or if he said it already. When he says
The will to act.
the will to act.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring that up. We just had it.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Everything about the will to act, and going back to just the basic concept of the will, the ability to have a choice, and that not necessarily meaning the same thing as being able to act on that choice. And
Yes.
Ducard not making that distinction. That if there's any opportunity where in your mind you can choose something, you have to choose it. And then you go to Rachel, and she's on the opposite extreme of no, you can have a choice, but circumstances are a completely different thing, and Bruce having to balance somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, where Bruce learns how to stop and think and decide what the right thing is to do.
Yes, which
And Ducard thinks that you're supposed to somehow already know it in the moment right away.
yeah, because Ducard's a consequentialist. Ducard's whole thing is you act understanding the consequences of the act, but that's not always possible. You don't always know what the possible outcomes of whatever you're going to do are going to be. And there's lots of debate as to how a consequentialist is supposed to function. Is it expected consequences? Is it actual consequences? How do you hold someone accountable based on their intent? And that kind of breaks down Ducard's whole viewpoint. But the further we get into this, and probably when we get to Dark Knight, we can talk more about how Batman's philosophy doesn't actually work either. Batman's having to stop and be sure is just as problematic.
Yeah, and in that case, it becomes almost the Spider-Man thing where it's just every action you make, good or bad, is going to have consequences.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like you just never know, and so the Ducard's kind of ends justifies the means thing becomes really problematic too, because how would you know if his father acted in the moment when the guy's got a gun? And I love that Bruce says the man had a gun. Like, what really was he going to do? How do you know that he wouldn't have gotten all three of them killed?
Yeah. But then the important thing being he raises doubt in Bruce's mind that Bruce has got all this training, but he's still afraid of what his father might have done, and that ghost is still haunting him and how he acts. All that stuff's fascinating. And we'll get to it when we get more with Rachel. But it's kind of fascinating that moral
That
theory.
bed.
Huh?
That bed.
Oh, sorry. I didn't notice that until now.
You've never noticed that before?
No,
That
I don't.
bed.
I never looked at the bed.
Sometimes it's just looking in the backs of scenes.
But no, what was I saying? When you go through the history of moral theory, it's kind of interesting how overly complicated it gets. Like the philosophy Batman's utilizing, the whole Kantian Batman thing, doesn't come out until the 1700s. And the whole consequences view is about the same time, if not a little bit later. But as far as I can tell, and as far as most people are concerned, the absolute best way to act, which is the Aristotle method, was back in ancient Greece.
We already had it figured out.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone figured it out. And they were just overthinking it. That's partly why I like Nietzsche, is because everyone was just overthinking things. Which is interesting because, like I said earlier, Rachel is very much Plato. Rachel is very much the harmony of the state with the person. And Aristotle uses that a little bit later, but she's got a very different conception because she says very specifically justice is harmony.
Yeah. Yeah, she just spells that right out.
Exactly.
And that vengeance and justice are never the same thing.
Exactly. She's even more direct than Plato. It's hilarious.
I always thought it was a little bit strange that she doesn't want him to go to the hearing.
I guess I
Maybe-
can see it because he just got back and she doesn't know how he's doing with that whole situation. So maybe
Yeah, so it's like she'd like him to come back and stay and take the house just like Alfred would. but doesn't like the reason he's come back because he needs to move on, and she knows him well enough to know that he's not done that.
Yeah.
Maybe she felt.
And of course, the circumstances, are strange.
Yeah.
She might have felt like she was taking responsibility for, kind of for him, since he was he was gone, and kind of seeing it to justice, sort of.
Did Rachel and do we know this or not? But did Rachel and Bruce hang out at all after his parents died and before he left?
We don't know that, I don't think.
Because we get a name drop earlier that Bruce is going to Princeton, so clearly he's been through school. But has he been with Rachel ever since?
I always got the impression in that scene that was the first time they'd seen each other in a really, really long time.
That's what I always figured, but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. I guess maybe part of the other reason, I guess the biggest reason she doesn't want him there is because she's part of this whole setup to help Chill get off because of the information that he has.
Yeah.
That he's willing to give them, and he's going to see that as a compromise that he can't accept.
Yeah. We talked over
an unacceptable compromise.
We talked over, but just a second ago when Bale was pulling the gun under his sleeve, and he was hiding in the corner right before he comes out here. That expression he makes of like the wind is being knocked out of him as he's grabbing this gun is amazing. I love that shot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It makes you wonder if there's something already in him where he's super, super uncomfortable with the idea of guns already, but he wants this guy to die.
Yeah.
Having also building into the origin a definitive reason for why Batman doesn't use guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how it didn't necessarily start out that way, and that he was, he kind of got lucky there, really. That Gotham is corrupt enough that he didn't have a chance to shoot that guy.
Yeah. It all goes back to that Kantian categorical imperative idea that Bruce is now operating in a city where he acts a certain way, everyone's already doing that. So he has to very consciously make a choice to be different and build a new example.
I love that Rachel has that car because my family grew up with that green machine, the green Ford Taurus.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I had a blue Ford Taurus.
Oh, really?
Dan. Yeah.
It's just like she's driving around in my grandfather's car.
My Ford.
When she drops him off up here soon, what was she expecting to happen here? Like, it's kind of dangerous to be dropping him off there, no?
Yeah, no, it is. It's kind of bizarre.
I don't think she expected.
No, she didn't. But like,
it is crazy that she drives right up. It's like, I gotta teach you, but
don't worry, he walks off to the dock first and then goes back.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a weird cut there I want to talk about.
Oh, no, it seems like it was out of sequence. Like, it was filmed maybe after the fact, and they're like, oh, wait, no, continuity-wise, he wouldn't have the gun, so we have to put that in at some point. Like, it always seemed weird to me.
Yeah.
I love how believable this moment is, where he just has the look on his face, and just everything about this is what I would expect it to be if I was in this situation, explaining to a person that cares about you something this extreme. It's like if you were going to tell someone that, like, you were, like you were planning a murder, or you were going to kill yourself, something like that, and you really believe it.
That deserves a double slap.
And people make fun of that. I don't think that's fair.
No, she was going to kill somebody, especially somebody who she was kind of sticking up for doing what he was doing. So
I think maybe the reason people make fun of it is because here's that weird cut where he stands there. I don't know. When I saw this in the theater, I don't know where he was. Like, we needed to establish that he was standing next to water.
Yeah.
Because then he throws up. I was like, where is he going to throw? Oh, there's water.
It was a reveal.
Okay.
And I mean, it almost looks like a different time of day too. It's really awesome.
It does. Yeah, I never bought the continuity of that right there.
And when Aquaman comes back later with the gun, it's just weird. It's really weird. He's just like, why'd you pollute, man? And then the Justice League starts.
He's like, oh, so you're the guy that keeps throwing out your six-pack wrapper things into the ocean.
Yep.
God, Bruce Wayne. You rich people think you can just throw things wherever.
Yeah. This is continuing in the master casting here with Tom Wilkinson as Falcone.
Right.
Or Falcone, I don't even know anymore.
No, it's Falcone in these,
Yes.
but it's so hard for me not to say Falcone
Well,
now because I had to treat myself to say it right with Gotham when it changed it.
So you have like Falcone and Falcone in Gotham, and then you have Ra's al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul. Just so many different.
Yeah. And then you have Arrow that just uses both of those
interchangeably. Yeah.
And then you have the one line in Dark Knight where somebody says Falcone wrong. Falcone and says Falcone.
Oh.
And I was always like, oh, that's weird. I don't know why Nolan didn't like have them reshoot that scene. And then I get to Gotham and they say Falcone all the time, and now I don't know if I would even notice it.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
But anyway.
Falcone wasn't in anything before this, was he? Just trying to think off the top of my head. I don't think he's been adapted anywhere outside from this movie before 2005. Like not even a video game.
I think we should talk about that this movie, and of course it's hard for me to say this because this is a Joker line in Dark Knight, but this movie really changed things. And it's hard to go back and look at this without thinking about the way it's impacted not just Batman lore. I mean, this is a decade old now, which is crazy to think of. But not just how it's impacted Batman lore, but just how it's impacted the culture at large. And to go back and look at this and think of all the first that it has. I feel like I've really gotten to a point where I've taken it for granted, and it's hard to remember that. Like when I was in the theater, I found myself totally taken aback when I love the homeless guy. that I was totally taken aback with things like, oh, Joe Chill gets killed this early, and all these things I didn't expect him to do.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and it just felt like charting new territory.
Yeah, I mean, like even outside of Batman, like Craig's Bond films owe an immense amount to this.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that during the montage sequence earlier about how much influence this had with Casino Royale.
Yeah,
and just
and I said this the other day on a video we made. It's circular though, because
cyclical?
because Bond influenced these really hard. Nolan talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not just that he was a big Bond fan. He talks about how he thought that the 70s comics, because he read Batman when he was a kid, he thought that the 70s comics, that stuff Denny O'Neil was doing, were heavily influenced by Bond.
Oh yeah, totally. The 70s was back when we had like Bruce Wayne living in a penthouse as opposed to the Batcave. He was totally James Bond.
So then he brings Bond into this, and then the Bond movies start taking from this stuff.
Yeah, it's really weird. And then you have the Bourne movies, which was, trying not to be Bond. It was trying to be the anti-Bond, and then Bond started imitating Bourne.
Like that a little bit.
It's a very strange. I always love this scene, him stealing from himself.
Yeah, tell that to the guy who owned these.
I remember there's a lot more in the novel, the adaptation of this.
Oh, really?
There was a lot more. I mean, it went full on Ra's al Ghul as immortal. In the book adaptation, because they would occasionally go back to written notes or written letters he would maybe from a journal or something like that, talking about directly wanting him to be with Talia and take over because he's been doing it for so long. There's a lot of little things in the adaptation that I kind of took away. And
see, at the risk of bringing up Rises again. Before we get there, I always loved how completely ambiguous this movie is about if you're a Batman fan. You wouldn't pick up on it if you don't know this character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But toward the end, and we'll talk about it when we get there, I'm sure, but we're really ambiguous about whether or not he was around with things he talks about for how long the League of Shadows has been around. And when you get to Rises and they don't full-on go there, I always kind of thought that was a misstep. It would have been such a wonderful reveal, even posthumously, that Ra's, and it would have made a lot of sense with the overarching themes and ideas with all these movies. And obviously, again, we'll get there. But that he's not actually immortal, because when he says we sacked Rome and we put rats on plate on, he says that like he was there.
Yeah, I could still see him, by the way. He's right there. He's right there. Bruce, he's right there. All right, he's gone now.
No, you're right, and I think part of it is just Liam Neeson plays
You just ruined this whole movie for me. You ruined the whole thing. I'm sorry. What's the?
I was just saying, Liam Neeson plays it so out of place. Like Liam Neeson doesn't act like he's a guy from the '80s or the '90s or the 2000s. He's just so distinct,
timeless.
like you can really feel like there's something off about him as a person. And when he gets to that line and we don't know whether or not Lazarus pits exist or whether or not he's immortal, I just always kind of assumed in my head that they did exist, because he's just so comic book. He's perfect.
Yeah, and what's great is he's not just out of time; he's out of touch.
Yeah.
Like, if he would go spend any time in the quote-unquote real world, he might start to build some empathy again. But of course, he doesn't want to do that. His whole system of ideals is built on a lack of empathy.
Yeah, I mean, the philosophy he's using was developed by economists. So the whole idea comes from people are numbers before they're actually people.
Which is really interesting because it all comes from a place of revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
For what happened to his wife in the first place. And so he's still he probably doesn't want to recognize just how in a way human he still is.
Yeah.
But it's all still about this personal thing where the world wronged him and he's got to get back at it. But it's one of those revenge plots that it's not generic. I think we should also probably mention that we were talking about how this has influenced so many things that we can't stop doing now these villain plots of destroy everything and start over.
Yeah.
And we already had a whole lot of them before this, but this is one where I didn't find myself in the theater going, oh, it's another one of those.
Yeah.
Because his psychology and worldview is so interesting.
Sorry, it's just hard to talk watching this, and I really like the whole shadow game they play. But no, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm having that with this whole movie. I'm like, can we just watch this movie?
It's tough. I love this opening stuff when Roz is training him. It's so good. But no, you're right. Because it seems like almost everything after this, everything superhero at least tries to do this. Arrow does it literally every season. Avengers: Age of Ultron does it. As much as I love that movie does the same thing. Everyone seems to have this very complex villain that wants to just burn everything to the ground and start over. Which is interesting because I've always liked that idea. I've always liked the idea of a hero wants life for its own sake, and the villain is questioning whether or not life deserves that kind of attention. And this is the first time I've ever seen it on film, and it works so well.
Well, and also, I don't think it's... I mean, see, I shouldn't say this without having an example at the ready. I don't know it's kind of the classic, again, Bond villain thing, right? Where, aren't there Bond villains that have that, where it's like, we want to start over?
Not...
kill a bunch of people and start over?
Well, there's Bond villains that want to, dominate the world and get a lot of money, but no one, specifically has this idea of we need to break down civilization, I don't think.
Okay, see, I haven't seen all the Bond movies. I'm not a big fan of those, and I should watch them because I keep being forced in situations where I have to talk about them. but there's a Deep Space Nine episode that does kind of a Bond parody, and the villain in that, has that exact motivation.
I guess Die Another Day did it, but that movie's so bad and doesn't make any sense anyway.
I also think that came out after the episode I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's definitely 2002. Did. No, I mean, because Die Another Day's got the whole Diamonds Are Forever space laser thing that's going to blow up cities. Yeah. And I have no idea what the motivation is behind that, so maybe they want to start up.
By the way, that was a holodeck thing where Cisco plays the villain, and you'll love his name, Steve. His name was Hippocrates Noah.
Oh, that's perfect.
Isn't that great?
Oh, I need to...
Anyway, so about Batman.
Batman? Everything leads back to Star Trek, don't worry. And Bond, apparently.
Yes.
Isn't it really cool how this is one of those movies where you become so invested in this character? Yeah, I said this when I reviewed the movie, that it's a movie first. It's for people that love movies and love stories before it's a superhero thing. And you don't. I think most people watching this, except for maybe little kids, didn't spend a lot of time checking their watch, going, when does he become Batman? When does he put the suit on?
Yeah. Nolan has that thing where he'll work within a genre, but what you are watching is just pure cinema. It's just you're enthralled by the visuals and the writing and the acting, and he just has such an eye for it. I watched The Prestige, and that's a science fiction story. That is literally straight up a science fiction story, but you watch it and you wouldn't think it. It's just so incognito, and it's just such a great movie first.
Yeah, and I mean, he talks about how Blade Runner influenced this. He made everyone sit down and watch that movie before they made this, and it's definitely got the same vibe, but that is a science fiction film.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because, of course, 89 was compared to that a lot
Oh, was it?
visually. Oh yeah,
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
yeah. Go back and read Roger Ebert's review, and he immediately brings up, and I mean, kind of says it's just ripping it off, and it's not that interesting because he didn't like that movie very much. But
That's weird. I didn't see 89 as anything like Blade Runner.
I think he meant just like the moodiness of the city and how like
It's the only thing dark before that you could compare
It
it
was
to.
the
I
yes,
guess.
that's right. That's right. Nothing dark
In
ever came
tone.
out before that. Yes.
Yeah, no,
It-
nothing else where the city was a character kind of thing existed at
We
that point,
never
I guess.
used the word stylistic in a review before Blade Runner. Never happened.
I love Ken Watanabe's dramatic pause right before that explosion. He's just like, huh, and then boom! Like he kind of pauses, like he's like mid swing. He should have kept swinging. He would have been fine.
You know what? You know what's crazy? When I saw this in the theater, I felt like such an idiot at the end because I was like, yeah, obviously that couldn't have been the real Ra's al Ghul. We're gonna kill off Ra's al Ghul in the first act of the movie.
Well-
but like, I totally bought it.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
to
I
be
did too
fair-
because I felt like an idiot afterwards. But stuntmen.
Well, to be fair, if you were watching this for the very first time, you could have assumed Lazarus Pit.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That is true.
That's a good point.
Stuntman.
This looks like it
Stuntman.
would be the most painful thing imaginable.
Yeah, dislocated shoulders right there.
Oh man. And again,
Yeah.
Bale's
always
expressions, I always love looking at his face watching
Oh,
some
yeah.
of this stuff. Like it looks agonizing.
Stuntman.
Would you stop? He's ruining the movie for me.
Yeah, that's Liam Neeson. That kid is
Oh,
like
it's
maybe
at
in his
least
30s. Like that did not look like anybody near Liam Neeson's age.
It's at least not 60s Batman.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, what can you do? There's only so much you can do in that situation. You can't have Liam Neeson dangling, like doing wire work. Like, I mean, he wasn't that old at this point, but
I don't know if Liam Neeson really cared about the product,
yeah.
he would have done that. I'm totally kidding. He did a lot of his own stuff, just like Christian Bale did.
Yeah.
And they did so much of the choreography. Another thing that I think is wonderful about this movie is that the choreography never looks like choreography.
Oh yeah.
It looks like it's really happening. And people complain, a little bit later that you can't really see what's going on in the action scenes. I have always defended that. We'll talk about it when we get to
Yeah.
it. I've always defended that. I think it feels like you're actually in the moment
and
with the guy.
well, this was one of the
I
first movies kind of back then that started catching flack for that shaky cam close up. Can't tell what's going
I
on.
don't usually like shaky cam, but you can see what's going on in a lot of places. I feel like there are moments where we do
It's done
it
effectively.
for us, but also for story reasons.
Yeah.
This tried to make us feel like we were Batman before the Arkham games did it.
Yeah.
So before we get too far ahead, I just want to mention that anywhere outside of the comics, of anything Batman ever made outside of the comics, this is the single best scene ever. This is the most perfect Batman scene you could ever have. I love the speech he gives.
I mean, I'd love to
about
say that's
symbol.
hyperbolic, but it's probably one of my favorite.
Reprisals.
Top five. It's one of my favorite. Reprisals.
I did not know what that word meant when I watched this movie originally. Like I was like, I was serious. I mean, I was how old? Like I was maybe 15ish, 14, 15, 13. What year did this movie come out?
05.
05. Oh yeah, so I was 15.
Got it.
So I was 15, and
I was in college.
I was just like, this was a step above, I think, my comprehension. Like this kind of, I think, in a weird way, woke me up to cinema. Like I was into movies and I was into Batman, but this really just launched me right into it. Into
Especially
Nolan
if you grow up with stuff like Forever and Batman and Robin, and then suddenly this is the next Batman you see in
like
live action.
Batman for me was relatively inconsequential outside of the animated series, which I did love, but I didn't have it's one of those, I guess, nostalgia things. Like, you go back later in life and watch it and it's like, holy crap, that is amazing. And I can't believe I watched that as a kid, and there's no way I could have gotten what they were doing as a kid. Like,
well, the thing that really jarred me when I first saw it was, oh god, it's actually about Batman.
yeah.
I mean, he's this is a character study, and it's not even just the obligatory origin where we're actually with him the whole time and we sort of get in his head, but it's really typical and it's what he's made. It's a character study,
and it provides
it's a study of that classic psychology. But he's a real person first.
Yeah, and I mean, it provides an origin. I think this is the first time I've ever gotten this, but it provides an origin for why Batman and Bruce Wayne might be two different people.
Yeah.
Like psychologically speaking, what does Bruce Wayne have to do to himself to create an image of Batman, and what's the repercussion for that?
Well, and something that was unprecedented is we get to, really spend some time with him before he actually becomes Batman. I mean, we kind of had that with Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah. He doesn't put on the suit until like I think 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, I like this. This was probably no, this wasn't the first Nolan movie I had seen. I was gonna say,
It was mine.
Nolan has, was it?
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
I had
same
found
with
out
me.
he was doing it, I had talked to back in the days of Yahoo chat rooms. A 13-year-old DanzNewz was talking to a much older person about movies and stuff like that, just because I was so into movies, and he had suggested to me Memento, and I looked it up and rented it, and I was just blown away and so excited that somebody who made a movie like Memento is making a Batman movie. Like, that's such a strange idea. And Nolan has a history of reusing actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally in his,
I mean, a lot of directors do.
yeah, but like he does it in the next movie. Like he'll reuse an actor in literally the next movie he does, and then not reuse them later. Like it's
Yeah,
like,
Michael Caine is in 3 or 4 of his movies right after
oh
another.
well, Michael Caine is in practically all of his movies, starting with Batman Begins. He is in all of his movies. But I'm specifically talking about, like, in this movie, the DA was from Insomnia, and there are also some other actors who
And I think Falcone was in Memento.
No.
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 No, I know Flash was, though.
Flash was in Memento, and no, he wasn't.
His name was not Flash.
No, his name was not Flash. He was the hotel clerk.
He was the hotel clerk, yeah. Okay, so I gotta interrupt you for a minute and say that
Go for
I
it.
cannot believe this is a set.
I know.
Oh,
I was
know,
blown
it looks
away.
Great.
This is Nathan
I always
Crowley, I
thought
think.
that they actually went to some cave and shot this somehow. I mean, like that seems like a crazy thing to do. And then they actually built this, and they actually flooded the set.
Yep.
And yeah,
Well, to
it's
talk about
fantastic.
just how difficult the lighting was here. Like it took them forever to get it just right.
Yeah. I mean, the lighting's so realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Nathan Crowley did. Yeah, Nathan Crowley did Begins. He's done a lot of Nolan's movies. He is a fantastic production designer.
I love the music, particularly when Bruce is standing up right here. It's so perfect.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised that we haven't brought up soundtrack yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I don't know, the score for this is probably a good 30 or 40% when I first saw it, what hit me like a ton of bricks about this movie and why it was so profound, such a profound experience for me. Because it was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It just put me in a mood. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
something about it goes completely with the psychology. It's difficult to explain. And again, was a thing that really, like affected everything after it.
It
Every
changed the
action
landscape.
movie
It changed the
Oh, yeah.
landscape.
sounds like this. So
Well-
many action movies sound like
Well,
this.
partially because Zimmer scored all of them, but Zimmer has worked on 80 movies since Begins.
There were a lot of people that ripped it
Yes,
off.
no, the
too.
percussion.
Yeah, the percussion, exactly. And it's really easy to go to Dark Knight. Like, everybody noticed it after Dark Knight, but it started here. It's just that popularized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's funny is, and I can't think of any particular, but I remember watching a movie or two between 05 and 08 that were already doing this. And this movie was successful, but it wasn't a giant powerhouse by
No.
any stretch.
No.
It made like 40-something million its opening weekend. And I think that's because people were trepidatious about the idea of new Batman because of what the last one was even 7 years before. People and Batman, of course, was not. I mean, it was popular, but it wasn't anything like it is now, and that's because of these.
Yeah.
And then Dark Knight comes out, and it did worldwide $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is the to date 23rd highest grossing film ever made.
So I'm gonna throw out a really dumb nitpick while we're here.
Yay!
Is it regarding Rutger Hauer?
No, it's not.
Speaking of Blade Runner.
Speaking of Smallville,
But just a second ago, we saw Bruce Wayne walk in. We'll see him here again in just a second as well. But whoever was hired to do Christian Bale's suits, they don't know how to tailor the length of a blazer. It's just way too long. It doesn't look right. It looks like he bought it from Walmart.
This is
I
why
mean,
you're
It's an
here,
expensive
Steve.
suit, but if you don't get that height right, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, those are the kinds of observations that Dan's supposed to make, Steve.
I don't know. I'm like a men's dress guy, I guess.
Stealing everybody's roles. I'm just kidding. Steve, why couldn't we have just called the Rutger Hauer's character Morgan Edge? We should have just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the guy he played. He's pretty much just Morgan Edge.
Yeah, that
except
would have been great.
I really liked him there. He's one of those great character actors that goes back and forth between TV and movies quite a bit.
Oh yeah. I think everyone on the Wayne board is actually pretty well cast. They don't feel stock at all, and I mean they are, but they hire good actors, they do good work, and as far as Nolan goes, you can never tell who's going to pop up where and what kind of lines are going to become callbacks eventually. Other movies are way too obvious about it, but like here, stuff like you didn't get the memo and stuff like that.
You didn't get the memo. That's great. Well, and then if memory serves, because it's been a little while since I've seen it, didn't we come back and use one or two of them even more in Rises?
I think so. I don't know. It's been like 2 years since I've seen that movie. Oh no, it hasn't. I actually just watched it recently. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh well, you just don't remember.
No, I just don't remember. No, yeah, I just rewatched all these recently because I did those videos with King on my channel.
What's your channel, Steve? Plug time. No, I'm just... like Nolan's pretty good about return dialogue and having a different meaning second time around, or just like a nudge or a jab or whatever. But like something, I guess I probably should wait till Dark Knight. But something that always bothered me from the Dark Knight was the close to the vest, close to the chest line, because that's two separate conversations from two separate characters.
Yeah,
and it's like it almost comes back as a callback, and I'm like, but those characters weren't anywhere near.
Yeah, so then you can see the writing in it.
Yeah, it was really weird. Why would you use the same phrase twice in the movie from different characters?
And
that's different than setup and payoff.
Yeah, I know, but it feels like it's a payoff for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. Setup and payoff is like when you have the stethoscope, and then you get to the end and he finds the stethoscope. It took me 3 viewings before I caught that.
Yeah.
It's a really cool scene though.
Shut up, Steve. I know you get everything the first time around.
Yeah. Can we talk about Morgan Freeman
and the parents my fault thing the first time?
Yeah. Okay. It actually took me a couple of viewings before I even put together. Oh, the bats made him leave.
Oh, really?
And then I felt like an idiot.
It was flashing between the bats.
Yeah. No, I know, Dan. Yeah. You know what? I'm done being.
I didn't know what reprisal meant, but I got that my first viewing.
If anyone, speaking of the bats and the opera thing, if anyone knows in the comments what opera Bruce is watching specifically, please let me know, because I've tried to look it up and I just don't know off the top of my head.
I thought I had known that. I think that trivia's out there somewhere.
Is it? I don't remember what it is.
What are we talking about?
The play that they were watching with the bats.
Oh, I've looked that up before. I don't. It's in my trivia book.
Forget what it's called. Is all.
Yeah.
What opera does Bruce attend?
It's not on the Wikipedia.
Mephistopheles.
That's right, Mephistopheles.
Mephistopheles. It just says it looks like Mephistopheles. Faustian opera.
Yeah, that's right. I was always disappointed to find that the musical in Spider-Man 3 was made up and not an actual musical. I always thought that had to be a real musical, and then I don't think it actually is.
I always thought that was a real movie, but I don't know about that anymore.
I always thought like these are these really smart details where, like, in order to stave off suspicion, they have to buy way too much of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really cool.
There's a lot of this movie is just full of clever explanations. Yeah. Like it's just like there's like I mean, it's so great, the dialogue and just the thinking about, okay, if he's gonna be Batman, what does he have to do? How does he get his stuff? It's all thought out really logically. And I'm glad they return in The Dark Knight with Nolan Reese trying to blackmail them with the plans, because there's no way that
somebody would have to figure
somebody
it out.
would have who worked in applied sciences. It wasn't just Lucius the entire time, was it? Somebody else had to have worked on those plans.
Yeah.
or at least seen the plans or approved them to know that.
Well, they were all
You know.
like military contracts and such. There must have been like
Yeah.
whole committees that know about that stuff.
Yeah, like once that stuff's on the street, it's like, wait a minute, who could it possibly be? Oh, it was somebody working for Wayne Enterprise. You might not immediately know it's Bruce Wayne, but you'd be like,
Yeah.
well, it's somebody in that company,
Yeah.
and who would have access to it? And like when Lucius says, all this stuff's yours anyway, like he officially owns it. Well, not officially
Yeah.
yet, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know what I'm saying.
It's okay. I know that feeling. I have it all the time.
Ignore me. It's
God,
just
Gary
my
Oldman.
deal.
Oh, he's
Gary
great.
Oldman's so great.
This thing with the stapler to his back, I love this scene. It's very classic Batman.
I always thought that was genius. The only thing, and I know I've said this 1,000 times, but Steve, the only thing that I really wish that we got in these movies that we never really get, classic Batman things, is Batman with a flashlight in his mouth.
Oh yeah, that would have been fantastic. Well, I mean, to be fair, this Batman is not a detective.
He's not a detective. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I mean,
we probably had this discussion, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, that's my big thing, because I love Dark Knight and I love Batman Begins. They're two of my favorite films of all time, two of the best superhero films ever made. But he's not really my Batman. Like, I watch these for artistic, cinematic reasons before I watch them because I like Batman.
Yeah.
And I'm to a place where I don't think I have a definitive Batman anymore. I think I see so much merit in different kinds of Batmans that I kind of don't mind the Ninja Batman over the Detective Batman anymore. I mean, I think in some ways I still sort of prefer the detective thing. I also feel like if this Batman had kept going and there wasn't that 8-year gap with Dark Knight Rises, he still could have become one.
Yeah, he probably could have. Rises really should have left that gap a little bit more ambiguous to kind of accommodate for that, the same way they do it here with the Lazarus Pit. Just kind of have a just some random line that says Batman was around, but we don't know anything more than that.
But you could also make the argument that this is really contemporary, and that you live in a world where you might not need like real detective skills as much as just the kind of intelligence he has with the sort of training he got with the League of Shadows in being able to disappear the way he does, and in being able to sneak up on people and stuff, and then technology. So, I mean, like, that's where the gadgetry comes in, is that, like, we live in a day and age where the technology is caught up to the point where as long as you're pretty intelligent, you can let the technology kind of work for you, and that's where the gadgetry comes in.
That's fair. And plus, Batman, at least in this universe, doesn't deal with very obscure random crimes. He deals with terrorist attacks. It's a much bigger, higher profile thing. He doesn't really need detective work in the same way.
Yeah, well, and we never see him dealing with anything small. It's always big, huge, scary bad guys.
Yeah, and the only exception is the opening of Dark Knight with Scarecrow. But even that is not that difficult, because obviously Batman's going to keep tabs on what Crane is doing after this movie.
Yeah, good point. Well, yeah, and that gives you the idea that he has been tracking other things and doing, but he's working closely with Gordon, who is a detective.
I think in the Dark Knight they showcase a lot of the more detective stuff. I mean, he's researching the Joker, he's following Rachel. But like, I mean, he has that forensic scene with the bullet in the brick wall, and
the point I'm making is he doesn't have to be the world's greatest detective.
Oh yeah, he's just a detective.
He didn't. Yeah, that's the thing is that he. Well, and I would make the case that Gordon probably is still supposed to be technically a better detective than him because he's trained and he's got he's got more experience. And but like even with that, you're making my point for me, Dan, because you got the whole ballistics thing in that where he's basically just using technology that was probably
he is leaning on it.
Still developed, I would assume, by Lucius Fox, although I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we get no indication that Bruce knows the actual science behind that ballistic test. He just has the equipment to do the work for him.
Oh, yeah, it's the tools, yeah.
Yeah, and stuff that the police wouldn't have, although you got to wonder why he doesn't just give that stuff to Gordon, especially after he becomes a commissioner.
Which the comics deal with a little bit, where Bruce Wayne builds like entire facilities for the police to work on, so crimes get better response rates, but police don't want to use it as a rich man's handout. So there's like a whole pride thing in the comics that keeps him from trying too hard.
This movie also gives us, and the comics do this some too, especially the 90s, a really good explanation for why this particular city would need Batman. It's not that the cops are incompetent, it's that they're corrupt and you can't trust them. And that there's really only a couple of good ones. And you've always got that corrupt thing. Like, even Batman 89 did the corrupt police force thing, but importantly, the guy in charge isn't.
Yeah.
And so you kind of got to wait. Like, he seems a little incompetent, especially once we get to Batman Forever, where he's like, "Go, go!" and he's in his pajamas.
Yeah.
Um,
I like the whole earphone thing in the bat ear is pretty cool. But like,
Oh yeah.
this movie, they don't acknowledge the eye makeup. Like, you know, when you saw him smashing the mask, they had the eye slits, like it was like really tiny holes. But like, you know, he's wearing makeup when he's wearing the mask. He's wearing eye makeup because it's a mask with big holes that, you know. But they try to step around that a little bit by having
a lot of superhero movies do that. And my favorite silly, hilarious example is the Phantom.
Oh, does
Because
it
you get to the end of the Phantom, and he takes his mask off, and then there's no eye makeup, and you can like the cut,
same thing happens in Batman '89 or no,
hilarious.
Batman Returns. Batman Returns.
Oh yeah.
That bothers me every single time I see the scene where he rips off the mask, because they show him with the eye makeup, then they cut and he doesn't have the eye makeup on, but he still has the mask, and then he tears it off.
But it's funnier in broad daylight, and
that is true. That is true. And no, but Phantom can get away with it, I think. Batman Returns, I don't think can get away with it as much.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because that's doing
the spirit of Phantom is doing all of the cliche serial stuff. So it's like you can't.
Serial stuff, exactly.
I don't think Returns is that in tune with the Batman serials or anything, or that kind of spirit. Maybe a little.
Definitely not.
This movie is so atmospheric that you find yourself, even though the city is horribly corrupt, wanting to go there and live there.
I mean, it's got
What's so wrong with you?
I know, but I'm like, I want to live in this world, but I know I shouldn't want to live in this world, and
I mean, it's got a very 1940s noir kind of feel, where it's the worst place on Earth, but it's just got so much character in every little building that even if you can't safely live there, you just want to look at sets and look at places.
And it does strike a really good. We'll just play it in video games.
Or Stice.
Stice. It does a good job, just like the animated series did. But it's a little more contemporary, of being kind of timeless and not being straight up. Okay, we're in 2005 right now.
Yeah.
There are places where the seams start to show a little bit with the kinds of technology we're using, especially in Dark Knight. But we are using kind of specific to that period technology. But we're not doing anything that comes right out and says this is the time period we're in. But we also don't go as far as to have like 1940s cars and hats and things like we did in '89. And now Gotham has come back in and done kind of the more '89 version of that.
Yeah.
Which I love. I mean, it's really fun to. I don't mean I love that show, but I love the look of that show.
And I mean, still to this point, I don't think anyone in that show has used a cell phone or a supercomputer or anything like that.
I want to say there have been cell phones in that show.
I'm pretty sure there were cell phones.
Have there been like touchscreen cell phones and stuff like that?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Every show should have flip phones all the time.
All the time. It's the universal cell phone when you don't want to be right now.
So I'm really surprised that we
should
are
bail.
An hour into this movie already.
Yeah.
I feel like we just started.
It moves at such a pace.
Yeah.
Well, it's dense. There's so much to talk about. This is one of those movies where, as we go, I keep feeling like there's probably all kinds of things we should have been talking about that we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, just talking, you can't get it all in.
We haven't touched on Flash. We haven't touched on Morgan Freeman really a whole lot. We haven't, like...
a whole lot. Well, you mentioned Morgan Freeman earlier, and I meant to...
I was going to say, let's talk Morgan Freeman.
That was their first choice. They Nolan and Goyer said that, like, that was the only choice, and, I'm glad he did it, because I'm with him. I can't imagine anybody else after that. And it was just super cool that they even thought to use Lucius Fox in a live-action film.
Yep.
Once again, I mean, we're so used to him being a mainstay in Batman now, but, like, that was a character I never thought I'd see.
No, yeah. The cast, I've always said, the cast in this movie is phenomenal outside of Katie Holmes. Like, that's, I think, the only casting misstep.
I will stand by her forever. I think she's fine.
I don't think she's terrible, but these are top-notch actors. So. This is like Gary Oldman, Tom Wilkinson, Morgan Freeman, Christian Bale wasn't as proven back then, but he still had American Psycho under his belt amongst other roles. But I mean, this is a ridiculous cast.
Nice coat.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a superhero movie like at this point.
Even that guy, even the bum has been in good movies. Like,
oh yeah,
like I mean, that's how far the casting goes in this movie.
But that doesn't mean that just because somebody hasn't like been proven and been in a whole lot of great movies yet means that they're. I don't feel like I'm watching her scenes and going, she's not anything like to their caliber. I just I never thought of it. Like it's a thing that people have made fun of forever and complain about, and it's just not a thing I ever noticed. So I can't get on that bandwagon because I don't get it.
Everybody looks like they belong in Gotham, though. She doesn't look like she belongs in Gotham. Like
you think she feels like she belongs?
She looks like a model. Like I mean.
CW.
I think Christian Bale has an edge to him, and he is a bit of a pretty boy, but at the same time, when you look at him and he is just showing those emotions like deep down, it's like I don't see that with Katie Holmes.
Yeah, I mean, like this scene is a perfect example where the way she's handling those two thugs, it doesn't feel like she's lived in Gotham very long. She's got these really strange expressions.
This is happening. I'm in a bad neighborhood.
And I think Maggie Gyllenhaal's worse, but I mean, I guess that's just me with Rachel. I don't like that character, and I don't like either actress that plays her.
Someone like you. Rattle the cages. I love that line. Just because it's funny sounding.
And I love his Batman voice in this movie. This is the best it's ever
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Obviously, everybody makes fun of it later. That's a thing that we overthought and we shouldn't have ever messed with.
Yeah.
The idea that Christian Bale thought that he needed to be like more of an animal in the Batsuit, in being intimidating and in being theatrical, and just that like that is. Wearing that suit allows Bruce Wayne to be the monster to a degree that he is worried that he will become. That's where the route comes from. That's why we have that. We shouldn't have done anything more with it than what he did. And when he starts delivering pages of dialogue in that, it sounds really hokey. But when he says one or two things, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I don't mean later. I think it's silly all the way through once you get to Dark Knight. But it just that voice. But when he does it here. Because once you get to Dark Knight and especially there's a couple places in Rises where he looks like he's almost like catatonic or something. I don't know what the right word is. Like when he says things where he's just almost like has a hangover or something. It's weird.
Yeah. It comes off the worst when you get to the Joker stuff, and he's trying to make like very important philosophical points about human nature in that voice.
Well, and even when he repeats the Rachel line at the end of this, and he says, it's not who I am underneath, like that's too much dialogue.
This city just showed you it's ready to believe in good. It's hilarious listening to him say long sentences because he has to catch his breath. Like it's just like I've done the voice in long sequence. You're going to you have to pause every few words.
Well, yes, but Dan, I think what he's doing is he's like, I just was in this big epic fight, so I would need to catch my breath. Yeah. But it sounds silly in that voice.
But that voice is literally exhaling while speaking. So you are losing a lot more air when you're doing it, even after a fight or just talking.
I don't know if it would be any better if he did like the Arrow thing and he used a voice modulator. Yeah. But. Again, the one he uses here I think is kind of fine. I would rather it not be modulated the way it is, because it doesn't sound like a voice modulator that Batman's carrying with him. It sounds like a thing they did to it in post,
which is what they did in the second film. Yeah,
that's what they did. Yeah, exactly. And here it just sounds like a guy doing a deep voice and going, and that's kind of okay.
Not even. It's almost like he's whispering a lot of the time, where he's just like, leverage to get things moving. Like he's very not very frightening. Like he's just kind of masking his voice.
I mean, it helps he's got a good contrast with what Bruce Wayne sounds like. Whenever he's in a social situation, Bruce Wayne has got a very weird playboy voice that feels almost more cartoony than Batman voice he's using here.
This scene always reminds me sir, the plot's here. What? A plot device, sir. Our plot device has gone missing. Oh, you mean the plot device for the climax? Yes, sir. It's so out of place.
This also opens another plot hole of, if Scarecrow's been dumping water into the city for weeks, has no one been boiling their food? Has no one been boiling or heating water at all? No one's used a stove for weeks?
It would probably not be enough to get a conclusive, it'd be like a House episode where people are just coming in with random
Yeah, but
things and like
so many of those occasions. Like this must be a pretty massive city, so people have to eat. So even if like half the population did it,
and these guys are screwed, right?
yeah,
These guys are going down with the ship.
Well, also the big criticism I've heard about the water vaporizing device too is that wouldn't it vaporize the water in your body?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
By the way, I hate driving cars really low to the ground. I don't know why anybody would want to do that.
It's kind of weird.
Hurts your back. You may hit any bump. I don't know. It's not fun.
What if that?
You have to drive up any kind of incline?
What if that concierge had called him on that other one line? Like, what do you mean? Oh, I have another really nice car. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, I always remember the scene being in The Dark Knight, but it's in Begins. I always forget it that it's here, though.
So we had a little bit of a technical glitch, guys. So you guys might be a couple seconds off from us. So sorry about that.
It's fine.
But he just the waiter guy was just like, or the maitre d' or whatever was like, was like, and your friends don't have swimwear. Would it have been better if they had swimwear? Like if they had come
I think
in
he was just trying to be
bikinis-
polite.
If they come in bikinis, would he be like, so technically they're not supposed to be over there swimming, but I don't know, they're attractive and they have swimwear, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I kind of don't think that's how that would have gone down.
No.
Oh, probably not.
The whole I bought the place or I own the place thing, when it pops back up in The Dark Knight, it didn't. I always chuckle at it, but it's not as impactful. Like it's just like, I kind of did that joke on the first one.
But I do like that this is the Playboy Bruce Wayne and not the like philanthropist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's an element of philanthropist in Dark Knight. He does try to use his clout a little bit for the greater good with the whole Harvey Dent election thing, or not
That's
election,
true,
but fundraiser.
But that's true. But I think that's him evolving.
Yeah.
Like I like that here we don't have that stuff yet. That like because remember that comes after a couple of major things. One of them being that he's starting to turn around and decide that perhaps what he wants to do can be done without a costume and can be done without.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
With a face.
It's definitely
and
true.
Also, importantly, it happens after Alfred's speech during the party in this movie when he says, "Don't taint your father's name."
Yeah. It's not just your name, sir. It's your father's name. Oh man, that scene, I teared up the first time I saw that.
Oh,
It's tough not to watching it in subsequent viewings.
Because remember that even in the flashback at the beginning, I don't like to think of those as flashbacks, it's more nonlinear storytelling.
Yeah.
But which is why I have issues with a little bit of the flashbacky stuff that we're doing in Rises. See, I'm already doing it. I'm already doing it.
Yeah.
Because we managed to avoid that kind of stuff before. But anyway, when you get to that even that bit at the beginning when he goes back to the house and he's like, it's a mausoleum. If I had it my way, I'd pull it down brick for brick. He doesn't seem to have any respect for his father's legacy, even though he is, so crushed and can never get over his parents' death.
Yeah. I always love this as the Scarecrow reveal. It's such a neat idea or way to get into that character in a quote unquote more realistic, grounded way.
And it's not you don't have any of your typical supervillain team up.
Yeah.
Nonsense stuff with Falcone, I mean he's arguably not a supervillain, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
With Falcone and with Ra's al Ghul, and I like him just being a kind of henchman for a bigger villain.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people that really love Scarecrow didn't really care for that. I think it totally works.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean it works in the story. I don't care for it particularly. Like I feel like he didn't have to be Scarecrow. You could have just gotten another lackey to use fear toxin. He didn't have to be Scarecrow, and that's always bugged me. Like he's not fascinated with fear by any stretch, and he gets taken out way too easily.
You don't think he's fascinated by fear?
He doesn't talk about it. He's got no psychology.
He seems to be into it right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he takes a sick pleasure in like those moments.
Yeah, but I mean, like him taking pleasure and him having a view of what fear is or different.
Yeah, that's. I mean, there have been there have been more, thematic versions of the Scarecrow.
No, you're right, but Steve, you don't like that he's not talking about it the way you're used to him talking about it. He does say later that he's always been like fascinated with the insane and things like that, and I think.
But I mean, he says that there's no showing us where that comes from or what that means. It doesn't really have to be Scarecrow.
That's true.
It's just saying I have a character tick that's worked for the plot, but why that character tick matters and why it works for this version is never explored. And after this, he's just used as a joke for the rest of the franchise.
Well, that's true. Yeah. But I mean, I think the idea is supposed to be that Gotham has made him as insane as the people that he puts, that he puts in Arkham. But you're right. We don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's fine. It works for the stories being told. It's just a matter of.
But you're saying
he's kind of
a plot device. Yeah.
It's funny seeing Bale in that same bat suit at the beginning of Dark Knight, because it's almost like he doesn't fit in it almost like later, just because he's a different weight set,
different build and stuff. Yeah.
So he really fills it in and makes it look great in this film.
Oh yeah.
Falafel.
So Flash is I don't know, maybe somewhat of a representation of everything that's wrong with Gotham and kind of what Ra's al Ghul's talking about, where he just takes advantage of everybody.
Well, if you just take out the first two letters of his name, I think that's a a very good key point in his character.
And of course, he's a comic character.
Yep.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Oh, this scene has been so parodied.
Just over and over and over again.
Swear to me. The first time I saw this, I was like, man, this is great. I loved it.
And us looking at this from the outside, there are funny things about it. But if you were a Flash right now, that is horrifying.
That is terrifying.
I think it's still just. I mean, it's been parodied so much that you can't help but think about it. But at the same time, I think every single time it's just as effective. Even that crumb on Flash's face is scared right now.
Yeah. But I mean, that's attention to detail. Like if you think about it, when you're shooting a scene and you've got all this rain and stuff, you probably have to intentionally put that there, unless that actor is just constantly eating falafel.
I don't know.
Maybe is, but,
stuff. I mean, sometimes I see actors spitting stuff like when they just get into a scene.
Falafel?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he had to have actually been eating that sandwich.
This poor DA.
Maybe he was.
This poor DA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, he's
You're getting a little too. This is just like, if Harvey Dent had been DA at this point, this would have been his same fate. I think. Like it's just like it's.
Well, that's a good point.
Gotham was not ready. Like this, it just wasn't there. It wasn't to a point for people to be, the hero. Like it's just like.
He's trying to embrace Rachel's idealism, and I think it's kind of interesting that he tells her be careful, and then he's the one that meets that fate.
Yeah.
But then, kind of the only reason that Rachel doesn't meet that fate is because Batman's watching out for her.
Yeah. It's true.
So it's lucky that your childhood crush is Batman. You got real lucky there.
Yeah. Here it comes. Now's your chance, Batman. Kill Joffrey. I had no idea that was the kid from Game of Thrones until
yeah, I didn't know that because I've never seen that show.
A subsequent viewing, so I was just like, "Holy crap!" That's I had no idea. It's just funny when kid actors.
I've got lots of friends into that show that blew up when I showed them this movie and Joffrey was in it.
Yeah,
this movie does such a good job of balancing levity with all the heavy stuff.
And I feel like Nolan doesn't get a fair shake when it comes to humor. Just because some of his movies tend to be relentless, it didn't mean that The Dark Knight or Batman Begins or even Rises were that way. There's lots of good one-liners and jokes here that I think a lot of people that don't like these movies tend to forget about.
And I think some people also go too far the other way, and they're like, well, something that's this serious and heavy, and now we're doing like an intellectual superhero movie shouldn't have any of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, like it's too jokey.
This guy gets knocked out while peeing. I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. That's funny. That's levity right there.
But I also think that I also think that it's important to remember that in real life things get funny, and people tell jokes and people say funny things, and I like that. I think that Batman is a more sympathetic character because he lets himself go to those places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he always does it in this really sort of stoic way, but there's almost this like he's a guy in a bat suit. There's got to be some sort of absurdity to him to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's partly where the theatricality and deception stuff comes in. That
He's got to
Batman
have
is
like,
kind of aware that he's going a little bit off the deep end, and Ra's al Ghul even comments on it, saying that he took the advice a little bit literally.
yeah, I mean, like everybody always talks about the nice coat thing. I love that. I mean, that's again a nice payoff. He remembers that was his coat.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, like, he says that to that guy. If that guy really put things together, he might think, hey, maybe that was Bruce Wayne, but it's this guy, so he's not going to tell anybody, probably.
So what's happening to Batman here with Scarecrow is pretty terrifying. The first time I saw this, it kind of unnerved me.
Well, it shows him weak. He's not Batman yet. He's not. He's still training, essentially. Like, he's not ready. And this Michael Caine, I think, is one of the reasons in a second that really nails it home. Just the fear on his face. Yeah, right here.
Oh yeah, with a little tear in his eye and everything.
Yeah, like he is afraid of what is happening to Bruce, and he is just like, oh.
I mean,
Some of his eye makeup's worn there.
You look at this film from Alfred, you go back and look at this film from Alfred's perspective. This is a guy's father whose son doesn't want to acknowledge that relationship all the way through. It's kind of devastating for him until you get to the very end.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a pin in something really quick because I know I'm gonna get comments about it. I had forgotten that there were those really quick snippets of flashback that, of course, play as memory, and we do that again in Dark Knight Rises some. I remember having issues with it the last time I saw it and in the theater, but I will reflect on it and revisit it when we get there and see if I still have that problem, because it might be doing exactly that same thing. Because I don't have a problem with it here. It's memory. It's not trying to remind us of stuff so much as being with him in the moment and his flashing back to those things. It doesn't feel like, what I mean is, it doesn't feel like holding our hand or spoon feeding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, levity. You get exposition and levity at the same time.
Yeah, well, and that makes it feel realistic and not just we're getting information, but also, because I mean, exposition has become such a bad word when we talk about movies.
Yeah.
And you have to have it. It's but you don't want to do it in a forced way. So, what's important, and I mean, this is a great scene to talk about with exposition, is that our main character does not know the stuff that he's being told right now.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to be with him in his head as much as we can.
Trying to understand it, yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody has to explain that stuff to him. And so it doesn't feel like telling the audience a thing or something that we wish we were reading narrative and we could get that some other way. Somebody's got to explain that to him.
Yeah.
And you can have, I've read things and watched things that have pages and pages of exposition that are fascinating and don't feel, forced.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the architect in The Matrix Reloaded. I'm not talking about that guy. Although that's hilarious. Steve, I can't wait till we do those.
Yes, those are going to be great.
Because that's going to be so much fun.
The first one especially.
I want to watch you have to get through Reloaded, though.
It's going to be wrist-slitting, just wait. So in that shot right there, just a second, I'm not sure if I'm ahead or behind you two guys, but Bale has a little hair drooping off to the side.
Yeah.
He looks exactly like 1970s comic book Bruce Wayne in that shot.
Yeah.
He's perfectly off the page right there.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking like Neil Adams stuff?
That's a little before Neil Adams, what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's back right when Carmine Infantino just dropped the book. And the guy that was working with...
Tell them that
Frank
joke,
Robbins.
That's a great line. I mean, you really buy that these guys have known each other forever, and that he brought him up. And we haven't talked about this at all, but one of the things that I really enjoyed thinking about and writing about when I did the rewind on this is looking at the real father figure versus the kind of wannabe father figure with Ra's al Ghul.
Obligatory shot of the bat suit thing.
You got to have that,
Yeah.
and you got to have your suit up scene. But
it's still my favorite.
It's a nod
logo
back
that he's got.
Oh yeah, that was in all the promotional material they used the Batarang symbol, but on the chest it wasn't this sharp Nolan bat symbol.
Which is really interesting because 1989 had exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it had the weird. But I mean,
It
that
had a
didn't.
different symbol.
That symbol
And
wasn't
then
even.
the one that they sold it on was totally different.
Well, yeah, but that symbol didn't appear in the movie, did it? The actual the one they ended up using the promotion with, because it was the symbol was different on his chest, but I don't think there was a recreation of the actual symbol they used for promotion in the film like this one.
Not in '89. The closest thing we get, of course, is the Batwing up on the moon.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that was the
it
only
is
thing
that.
Yeah. Okay. That's the only thing that I could remember that was like that.
And what I thought was so cool, and they almost could have sold the whole movie on it. Now we're talking about '89. Is there was a CD released for the sound, and I want to say it was the score as opposed to the Prince album, where the cover of it was just the moonshot.
Gosh.
And I always thought that was so cool. I have that somewhere. Anyway, Batman Begins. I think it's cool that Mr. Earl is kind of this duplicitous figure, sort of. He's this devious figure, but they don't go too far with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of stereotypical big corporate CEO, but I think that kind of works to the advantage of what the movie's trying to talk about. When we get to, specifically by the end, when we get to that idea that Batman is a counterbalancing force. Like, there are things in the system that work, there are things outside the system that work, and Batman just works as an intermediary between the two. The police are corrupt, so people need Batman, but not all of them are corrupt, so Batman still leaves them for the cops to pick up as opposed to killing them.
Just to touch his ear.
That way we know.
Yeah, he's reminding us that he put the ear thing in there.
Yeah, that wasn't real necessary. I think we could kind of deduce that the reason the sound sounds different now is because he's listening.
Yeah,
but okay.
I wonder what Warner Brothers, what their reaction was when Nolan delivered the full story that he was planning on doing. Because this was nothing like what had been seen on screen before.
I always get the sense that they were fully behind it, and I mean, he talked to them a lot about what his ideas about Batman were, and they wanted something that was totally different than what we'd had before, and was a lot more serious. And
has gravitas, the other films were theatrical or whatever, but they were campy. This is this has
and
weight to it.
And of course got campier as they went along.
Oh yeah,
I mean, nobody saw 1989 and called it campy.
No. I understand that. Yeah. It was the Schumacher era that really kind of camped it up, but
I don't understand why Rachel goes with him and thinks that anything's going to happen but what happens. I mean,
she's down to the basement. What? Why?
I have things to show you. She's like, okay, I mean, not really, but I mean, of course, once again, she's kind of this, idealistic character. She's optimistic. She wants the city to be a certain way and tries to live in it like it is that way. But she's not realistic about things to have survived this long.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes back to it feels like she's not really a part of Gotham. Clearly, she must have lived in this city for her whole life and doesn't feel like it.
Again, I think that maybe they're not totally pulling this off. I think the idea, my wife loves to quote that all the time, the Batman.
The Batman.
Especially because she likes to bring up the Batman TV show, and she's like, see, that's where they got that.
The Batman.
Which actually, I think that show started before this. But...
it started, I think, right around the time of it.
Yeah, it was kind of like the animated series with the '89 film, because it came out right after Begins. Because I remember I started watching that a little bit.
Yeah, so I love that show.
Steve, this is kind of subtle and maybe a stretch, but I'm wondering if you'll at least kind of give me this. Crane here is fascinated by Batman as a figure of intimidation.
Yes, but he needs to say that.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm stretching a little bit, but that he's looking around and he's very excited about getting to see Batman, and he knows what Batman's doing.
Yeah.
That he's trying to freak these guys out, and I mean, obviously there may be a lot more of a superstitious and cowardly lot than anybody would be in 2005, where they're like, do you think he can really fly? I don't know about that. But importantly, everybody talks about these as really realistic and grounded, and Nolan wanted to make a thing that felt grounded, but even he is the first person to say this is supposed to be a heightened universe. And a lot of people, I think, go way too far and say that it's fully real. It's not supposed to.
Yeah.
it is a heightened universe. It's just a lot more grounded than any version we had before on the big screen.
Yeah, and I mean the water machine alone is sci-fi and realistic.
Cartoony.
And that's why I don't understand how you can have a thing like that and then people think that the Lazarus Pit would have been going too far.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we get to Dark Knight and we're not escalating that kind of stuff.
The franchise became a little bit different with that movie. Like that was so much more of a crime thriller than this is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is more comic booky than that movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, like if you just go off inspiration, this is Blade Runner. That was Heat. Those are two very different things.
Oh yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, I love the way he sees Batman and the goo coming out of his mouth and stuff. And I always wanted that action figure.
The goo. Batman action figure now with goo.
You press a button on the back and just more of it comes out.
It sounds like such a 90s.
It's got like it does sound like a 90s. So it's got like a pump thing like inside of it where you put the goo in and then it comes out the mouth.
I had TMNT figures that came with ooze that you could play with.
Flash looked so disinterested when he got out of that squad car. He did not want to be there. He didn't want to have to do any work. He literally just got out like, oh, like I have to work now.
I love the look on his face when he finds out that Batman might be in there because remember he just got turned upside down by Batman.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, SWAT's in the way. You go in there. Yeah. And by the way, I'm gonna get back in the car and then drive it away. And I'm gonna go get falafel. Actually, no, I don't want falafel anymore. That's what was on my face when I was turned upside down.
He's never going to be able to eat falafel again.
That's right, yeah. What, your kids don't like pizza? Just like steals people's pizzas.
Flash the pizza stealer. What is this?
He stole that guy's pizzas! It also gets maybe a little bit comic book hokey, and I'm not complaining when I say this, but that helped. It's part of the heightened thing where he pulls the thing out of his shoe and he brings the bats.
Oh yeah.
I don't mind that whatsoever. Maybe it's breaking the heightened reality or whatever, but I don't mind it at all. It looks amazing. That's totally a Batman thing to do.
Oh, I don't think it's breaking it at all. I think it's helping to create this internal logic where it feels like the real world, but it's not. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there are the kinds of things we can get away with in a thing like this.
Yeah. I mean, it looks great. It's
one of the most iconic visual things from it.
Oh yeah, I mean the main posters were that.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
And I just love Batman actually using bats.
Yeah, I wish he did that in the sequels though. This is the only time he's ever pulled it.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, I love that. Now you gotta wonder though, would that not have maybe called some other animals?
Not necessarily. Bats can operate on very specific frequencies, so that wouldn't be too hard. Maybe
they're the ones from his cave. They've been training for this.
They've been training for it.
All right, guys. Now's the chance.
I want to see that montage, Dan.
Yeah. Him training the bats to come to the receiver.
and then
guys, you were 5 minutes late this time. I looked like an idiot. He's just sitting there. He's like, back up. And then he's like, what are you doing? You're just sitting there. It's been about 10 minutes. They're going to come up. Why didn't you use this in Dark Knight? It would have been much better than that sonic frequency thing.
Right?
Yeah. He's training the bats in this montage where we keep cutting a lot, and then all of a sudden you hear the swelling Rocky music.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. There's that poster.
There is one of the posters.
And there comes the awesome moment of excuse me when he's bursting through someone's cell.
Yeah, that's.
Don't run away. Stay here.
You're supposed to be incarcerated. I kind of love that, like I don't want to read too far into it, but I kind of love like these people are serving their time. They did something bad in the past, but they're paying for it now.
Trevor,
this is the system working. And I love that they don't get up and leave either. They just sit there.
You just murdered those people.
Yeah. I have probably brought this up I probably brought this up in the other commentary and like every time I talk about this movie, but since Dan's here and he's played the video game, I gotta mention it again. That is my favorite thing about that video game.
What?
Where you get to the Batmobile sequences and there's constantly a thing in the corner that says 0 casualties.
That's awesome.
That is so funny. Like, no matter what you do, you can run over everything. 0 casualties. And, like, it's the video game making fun of its source material. Batman gets so lucky that people never die. And I feel that way in many Batman things. Steve, I'm sure you have this too.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, Batman has a no-kill rule. We need more stories where Batman accidentally kills someone and has to deal with it.
I mean, just look at Arkham Knight. You can run people over and it's okay. The Batmobile's got a taser.
You can be going top speed and then you electrocute somebody and they still live somehow.
I know. That game is insane when it comes to keeping people alive. You can flip over cars with multiple missiles and everyone's fine.
That's the problem with having the Batmobile in that game and having the streets populated, man. I mean, like you're going around and you're zapping. Yeah, that's hilarious. You're going around, you're zapping. Yeah, Batman also doesn't care about collateral damage.
Yeah, no,
I get
this whole sequence. I just don't like very much. It's beautifully shot.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Made. Yeah,
I was gonna say the same thing. It just doesn't sell. Like I get the whole bridgeless jump thing or whatever, like the whole point of it, but like I don't like him going down inside the car.
Yeah,
because it happens really quickly in Dark Knight where he does it, and it's so awkward. He has to go down inside of it, and then he's like with his hands up against his face, like you can't see me, but he gets really like.
That seems so impractical.
Yeah. It's to me they're selling a toy. I know that's not what Nolan's doing, but it just seems like a toy gimmick.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and the thing is, there it is. Rooftops. I've always really enjoyed this scene, but you're right. There's a lot of things about it that don't fit. It does feel like your big obligatory action set piece.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you guys came for this. We got to make sure and deliver it. But yeah, I mean, you know, this isn't about telling story anymore. This is about a big, chase sequence.
It's just something you need.
Wonderfully well shot, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But when people dismiss this movie, because some people still do this, when people go back and dismiss these movies and look at something like this and say, "See, it's just an action movie," well, you're ignoring all the stuff where we're actually exploring characters and ideas. But yeah, it's hard to imagine that Batman would really risk killing all these police officers. And also, like, I guess it's possible that a lot of these cops are corrupt cops because we don't really know anything about them, but they all kind of just seem like guys doing their job.
See, we see that right there scene where the police cars just flip over. There's no way you live through that. It just doesn't happen.
There's no way everybody lives through that.
Look, there's his mines. Thank God none of the gas tanks explode or anything.
And it seems like he doesn't even care. Like, I think part of the problem is...
Well, some of it is, like, he's so, like, worried about Rachel that he kind of almost doesn't care.
Exactly, and I don't buy that.
At least there's a conversation about it with Alfred, but he still doesn't come around or anything. I mean, when he says damn good television, it's a hilarious line, but the problem is he thinks all this is necessary, and when Alfred says, you know, you've got to be... you've got to be more than a vigilante. He doesn't seem to really learn anything from that in that moment.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. That's just another reason I don't like Rachel, is that she makes him do all this, and I don't really buy it.
But I do like the idea if we explored it more. See, Steve, you're making me dislike certain things about this movie, which is awful. And frankly, you're not being invited back for Dark Knight.
Ooh.
No, I'm just kidding. But
I felt like a classroom. Ooh.
I gotta go to the
Dan and Cap show from now on. Steve won't be Baxi.
Oh, Cap caught Steve passing notes in class. But yeah, Steve, I do like, if we were to explore it, the idea that, and again, Alfred evokes this idea that she is kind of the big thing that makes him conflicted, where his
we have the mask coming off soon, by the way. Just that out for the no makeup thing. Being weird, but continue.
His priorities get out of whack because of this person he cares about, and it is important, I think, to give this Batman a person he cares about, especially in paralleling him to Ra's al Ghul, who is doing everything he does because he lost that person he cares about.
Yeah, I mean, thematically it works. I think it gets helped by the fact that it makes the love triangle in Dark Knight so much better. Because you've seen what this man has done for this woman.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like story wise, you could have used a couple more scenes getting to know who Rachel is, and maybe even acknowledging whether or not her and Bruce were friends before he left. Like those open, vague questions just hurt it for me.
That's fair.
Maybe they don't show him up close, actually, once he takes the mask off. I think they just show him from behind.
Let me ask you guys a serious question. Do you think it would have been possible to make this same movie without a love interest at all?
Yes.
Like you've got Alfred, but I guess the question is, do you need him to have someone that ties him back to his old life like this?
I'm gonna say no, flat out. I don't
No.
think you need Batman with a love interest until much later in his career. You could very easily have what he's anchored to be simply the memory of his parents and his name. And this film does quite a bit with that and his house, everything that with the way it burns down, the stuff with Alfred trying to honor their memory. You don't need a physical person as an anchor. You just need the institution that Bruce is trying to fight against and preserve.
You're right, Dan. We don't cut to the face.
Yeah, you could see that he didn't have makeup on when he took it off, but they didn't focus on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've put the makeup on, so I know it takes a little bit, and he would have a little bit of raccoon eye going on. It would be perfectly off right now.
I'm sorry, this is not working as well as I made it out to sound, because he doesn't say vigilante. He says it's not about thrill seeking, and that's a little bit weird because it's not. I mean, even though that was a thrilling scene for the audience, it's not technically about that. He's trying to save Rachel, and he does say that. I'm not sure why Alfred says that.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward.
I mean, just that he jumps to that and makes that, because I mean, like, he's taking an awful risk by letting a bunch of police chase him. Like, that can't just be, I'm gonna go joyriding.
Yeah.
That is a weird line now that I'm thinking about it.
I mean, even his justification's weird. He's like, well, he says, well, she was dying. But what about all the other people? You neglected to check whether or not they died.
Yeah, and again, the idea is that he's seeing her as more important than anybody else because he's being very emotional about this, and it's a personal thing for him, and he cares more about her than anybody else. But it might have been nice if Alfred had said, well, hey, you flipped a bunch of cars over, dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, just go back to the whole he throws away the gun thing. Like, I don't think he'd be that easily swayed into kill anyone in my path.
And obviously, I think the movie would love us to think that we're looking too deeply into that it's just an action scene, don't think about it. But the problem is, you're making a movie that is making me think a lot.
Yeah.
So those things are going to be more glaring in a movie like this than even, I think, some of the collateral damage in Man of Steel that people like to complain about. Where that movie clearly was not aware at the time that it was doing all that.
Yeah. And I mean,
and of course, we're about to get a movie that is going to deal with all that stuff directly, but only because people complained about it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're gonna the killing stuff gets a little bit more difficult because by the end of this movie, when Bruce says, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you, there's a very critical, nuanced argument in that gets completely destroyed if you think about what he just did with the tumbler. And
that's true, and that's a scene that I have come around on some that when I did the rewind, I had issues with it, and I'm more and more I've kind of come around a little bit on it, and as you said, on his worldview there. But yeah, the problem is he's doing a lot of things that could. I mean, he's not killing anybody. He's not on purpose killing anyone.
Because the plot makes him get lucky. Is the only is the issue.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and later on when he says, but I don't have to save you, he's consciously making a choice, knowing that person's going to die. Although people have brought this up, and I think they're right about it, that he sort of does that at the very beginning too, when he burns the place down.
Yeah, but at that point, I don't think he really knew what he was about yet.
Well, that's true.
So I think that works a little bit better. Well, we'll get to the train stuff because I've got a whole massive spiel on what's going on with the train and the why it's okay that he let Ra's al Ghul die and why it's okay that in Dark Knight he lets Harvey Dent die and all that. But we'll get there.
I also think it's really important to note, because we're going to get here in a little bit, that when Ducard says, you left me for dead, that's not anything like accurate.
Yeah.
No.
And he would know that because of where he wakes up. Like, it's not, you didn't know that I, like,
this lady.
you have to know. This lady is ridiculous.
Raz Al Ghul.
Raz Al Ghul. No, you're not pronouncing that right.
You know, I had a theory that she was the lady. Like, she reminded me of the lady from Forever and Batman and Robin, the quirky news lady, and I haven't been able to get confirmation on that. I've tried.
That's not who that is.
No, I didn't think so, but like just her inflection. Bruce, there's simply someone you must meet.
Well, something that I've never been able to get my mind around is that she says that, stands there,
and walks away.
And so no, she actually stands there for too long, and suddenly turns into this weird like cardboard cutout where she's part of the scenery, but she's privy to what's going on, and none of it is
the other
bothering
guy,
her.
The fake Ra's al Ghul does walk away with her, but yeah, she's just standing there.
But she stands there while he says, "I watched you die."
Yes.
She's just like,
and then he's like, "You should probably come with me," and then the guy walks away. By the way, thanks for doing that intro for me.
And also, Bruce, why would you say that in front of anyone? I watched you die.
Because that doesn't sound suspicious at all.
This lady's old. Maybe she won't live to see next weekend. Maybe that's what
I think that's more that chalk that up to more inexperience. Like he was just caught off guard. He thought he was dead.
That's true, but he doesn't. I don't feel like Christian Bale's playing it that way. He seems so like deliberate in what he chooses to do and say there. And I mean, like, this is a guy who's kind of ready for anything. I'm not saying that isn't surprising him, but he's very good at hiding that sort of thing. And I feel like he is kind of hiding it to a degree there, and he's able to think on his feet and jump straight
point
to
proven.
this
Right here. Yeah.
So I'm not with you on that.
Okay. No, that's true. No. You shot me down properly there, because that's absolutely true. He's very on his toes, and this is a quick-witted, smart move.
It's a great scene. Yeah. I love it when Ducard says that was amusing but pointless. It's like, see, Ducard has a sense of humor.
It's also really suave. It's great. Like, look at the way he's walking around with that cane. It's awesome.
And he has the green scarf. That's kind of like classic Ra's al Ghul kind of color scheme.
That's a great point. I never thought of that.
Lazarus, like it just has that. It has that hint to it.
I mean,
it's a very dark green.
Is so good in this role that almost to the point where I don't want another Ra's al Ghul in a movie because he's just so perfect.
Although, the nice thing is, if you do straight off the page Ra's al Ghul, he's a totally different character.
That's true.
I'm not saying that what he's about is different, but he's different.
Yeah, his personality would be quite a bit different, but his philosophy is exactly the same.
Well, that's what's so cool about it, is that they reinvented the character without reinventing the character.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. And maybe that's why you're somewhat disappointed with Scarecrow, Steve, that they kind of left his dimension on the page.
That's true. I mean, like, you get the amazing Joker, you get the amazing Ra's al Ghul, you kind of want the amazing Scarecrow to round that out.
But only, I think, if you were going to make him, like, the main villain, because, importantly, you don't have time to do that psychology here.
No, that's perfectly true. But again, that's just why I wish maybe make it a different character.
It almost could have been Hugo Strange, but we'd be complaining about the same things.
Yeah, no, you can't do Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange would have to make a different movie for Hugo Strange.
But Scarecrow is that. Well, you could just make it Jeremiah Arkham, really.
Yeah, you can make it Jeremiah Arkham.
It's Scarecrow because of the fear themes, and he is visually representing that whole idea. And so, yeah, I mean, like, he does sort of, I never thought of this before, and I think you're starting to sway me, Steve, that he is a little bit of a plot device, but I have a hard time imagining this movie without the Scarecrow just because of that motif.
That's fair, but also remember, Scarecrow was not the first Batman character to use fear toxin. So you could have used, I mean, it wouldn't have been the same for the audience. You wouldn't be able
to. But you're saying that you're saying that as a comic book fan. Scarecrow has the word scare in his name, dude.
Yeah, I mean, just perception-wise, he's perfect. But I mean, like, the movie's so careful about everything else, you'd almost wish it was more careful about that.
Well, if that's its biggest fault, it's still my favorite superhero movie.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's a really good movie. It's still my favorite of the three.
It just seems to me like Ra's al Ghul literally destroys the city. Like, I mean, he tried to, he like tests it and if it doesn't meet the perfect standards, he will destroy it. Like, I mean, it seemed
Yeah.
like Gotham was an all right place before he started infiltrating it and making
That's
it
right.
degrade. Like, just because it doesn't stand to you trying to corrupt it doesn't mean it deserves to be destroyed.
I get the sense that it was probably more like where it's at the beginning of Rises at that point.
Yeah.
You know, and then they say no, it's not. Now you got to wonder though why they're picking on Gotham over any other city.
Yeah,
I've always
That's true.
wondered that because I love to know just what state it was in exactly. But the idea that one of my favorite ideas in the whole movie is that Bruce's parents tried to solve this problem. And with economics, just like he's trying to destroy the city, because of their altruism, and that created Batman.
I always thought he used to say "consider receiving," which still kind of works, but "consider us
That's
even"
hilarious.
makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, except as I said, it still doesn't because he has nothing to be even for. He saved them.
No, I know. I'm just saying as the line in general.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to bring that up again because that was a thing that always bugged me.
I think we're getting to this point where, I mean, we said this in the beginning,
Did
but
you
it's
really-
really hard to talk over this movie.
They had the emitter right there. Like, why? Why they brought it to Bruce Wayne's house to then drive away with it? Like, why wouldn't you have that anywhere else?
Don't you have enough guys?
I only travel with the emitter.
Are you stretched thin where you maybe we're destroying 3 other cities tonight?
Yeah.
Like,
Why wouldn't you have that in place? Like,
you have plenty of guys.
let's go drive it to where we need to go now.
I never noticed the emitter was there.
Yeah.
That's so silly.
Neither did I.
Oh man,
He's driving around with the emitter in his van.
this movie. That's so funny.
Oh, I love this line. Love that. Oh no, all those books.
Oh, I know, it's a tragedy.
Some really expensive stuff. This is another thing in the theater where I was like, oh my god, we're gonna burn down Wayne Manor?
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
And
just a
also-
tad behind destroying Metropolis.
and or Vulcan.
You know, I was gonna say earlier, this is when Goyer was all right in my book. This is
Yeah,
back when
yeah.
I was still into Goyer.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he had to work around directing Blade Trinity to work on this script.
Yeah. I was always happier when Dark Knight came out and it was written by, I mean, it's story by Goyer and Christopher Nolan, but it was written by Jonathan and Christopher Nolan, and I always like the brothers working together much more than just Goyer and Nolan. For some reason.
Goyer's an idea guy.
Yeah,
and he's
that's-
not a great
yeah.
plot
Yeah.
guy. He's got some great ideas, but you can almost always like smell out
Yeah.
a really melodramatic or super cliche Goyer line.
Yep.
All of the "I'm gonna stop you" stuff, that's great. And like his name, and I know we'll talk about this when we get there, but his name is not on Rises. But if memory serves, he wrote and early drafted that, and some of his dialogue had to have stuck in.
Yeah.
Because that's in there too, and then it's in Man of Steel too.
Yeah.
Can't tell me that's not Goyer. It might not be. I think.
Oh, I can't wait till we get to one of the most disappointing Batman retorts in history. Why did you come back? To stop you. Like, what?
I'm sorry. I think that's a Goyer.
You
line.
had an opportunity to make a really cool line that stays with people.
Yeah.
To stop you? What? Yeah, we know you came back to stop him, you dumb.
Thanks for spelling out Batman's inherent motivation.
I
That he's
stop
always gonna have to
criminals. Then he just runs off, flailing his arms.
do it. Well, Dan, there goes 20 more subscribers. Thanks, buddy.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Oh. All right, you can go over there.
I love the scope
Yeah.
of this.
Oh, yeah.
We get to see so much of it, and the bridges, and even here, Steve, I found myself flashing back to No Man's Land and going, "Oh God, you could totally do that here. We've got that kind of city, and
Yeah.
got where the bridges break down, and yeah, it's cool."
Yeah, I mean, just architecturally, there's lots of interesting stuff in the movie, and we talked over them, but there's lots of scenes where you just see the train randomly driving through.
Okay, we get
really
it. You want
connect
to
with
talk about the train? Fine, do it. I'm just kidding. I meant to mention with the house burned down that it's really neat, you know, that this arc that he's gone through where early on he says that he would that if he had he
Pointing.
just that's yeah the
Pointing.
plan he'd take the whole house down brick by brick,
Yeah.
and then it happens, and what does that do to him? Where does he come now?
Yeah.
The
And again, I think at the end when he gets when he kind of takes the company back, he's learning that he really does want to be both Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to find that balance, and that's why the theme in Dark Knight, the idea that he doesn't want to do it forever, starts to really work and resonate, because that builds directly off of this and immediately starts to turn him into kind of Batman. Like, I think what he's turning into at the beginning of this is something closer to comic book Batman, and then we start turning him into like a real person, and Nolan says, I don't know, in the real world I don't think anybody would necessarily want to do this forever.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that just comes from this was supposed to kickstart a Batman franchise, and Nolan wasn't initially supposed to make Dark Knight. But then they asked him to, and he got a really good idea.
Yeah, because when Rachel has her speech at the end of, you know, this is your mask and you're actually Batman, I don't know, we kind of get away from that.
Yeah, we do. I'm just starting to think.
I can see that as her perception of it, and I also am okay with the idea that once she says that, he starts to really to rethink it real hard.
Yeah.
But obviously, we'll talk about all that when we get to Dark Knight.
Yeah, of course.
Gordon took that antidote really late. It was already in the air when he took it, when he jabbed it into his leg.
Yeah, he's lucky that he didn't start seeing like unicorns,
yeah,
and chests and
suit up scene, obligatory suit up scene.
Oh yeah, I knew there was one somewhere. For a minute, I was second guessing myself. I was like, "Do we actually have that in this movie?" No, we do.
And I don't mind it. I love obligatory suit up scenes.
I mean, it's the tradition. Like, I mean, my favorite scenes in Blade are the scenes where he's suiting up, and it happens every single movie.
It's traditional, Blade too. And so is I'm Batman.
Oh,
and I don't think that we're now to a place where not every Batman movie has I'm Batman.
If Ben Affleck
I feel like every Batman. I'm gonna be sad. Yeah, every Batman movie needs an I'm Batman.
If it's good, I will make that my ringtone. I've already changed it so my sister's cell phone says Batman every time I call her.
I thought you were gonna say if that movie's good, your one huge complaint that'll bring it down is there's no I'm Batman. If there's no I'm Batman.
I hope that's good. It's Chris Terrio. It's got to be good.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You know, I guess this was dumb of me, because I made that case earlier that, you know, 89 does the corrupt police thing, but then it's got, you know, an above board commissioner. I guess Loeb isn't really corrupt either.
We don't know that completely.
For sure.
He's such a minor character for both movies. Like, he gets killed, but we don't know if he did anything wrong.
You know, they covered this.
I mean, he's really anti-vigilante and all that, but that doesn't.
Is he anti-vigilante? It doesn't seem like he wants to catch the Batman, but it doesn't seem like it's their first priority in Dark Knight, because their leads list has Elvis on it. Like, doesn't seem like they're taking it too seriously.
Well, doesn't he have we talked over things and I can't remember. I thought he had like a speech in this where he's like. Yeah, where he's talking to all the police.
Yeah, we talked over that scene.
He does.
We did talk about
that. Yeah, so yes, he is anti-vigilante.
Yeah.
He says nobody's going to take the law in their hands in my city.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, he's got that standard. You've always got to have the police commissioner that says that. He's got that standard thing.
You know, I never liked in this that you know, about a minute ago, Batman was doing the exposition about, you know, if the train reaches Wayne Tower, that's the central hub, Gotham will be covered in poison. They literally cover that once again when we're on the train with the guy in Wayne Tower's like, it's all gonna blow. And it's just like, why is that in there twice?
That
like
weird, that weird exposition guy. Yeah. Like, I don't know why we need the guys in the water. Like, again, it builds the scope, and it, you know, it shows you like regular people having to deal with this stuff and stuff. But yeah, it's redundant, and like, you know, that guy got cast in a speaking role to just tell us things we know already, and he's really good too. And like, he's just like,
that's kind of hilarious.
It's gonna blow.
So we talked over it. We talked over all three of them, but there's been 3 scenes in this movie with a Mr. Zsasz, which were all awesome. And I'm really disappointed that we never got an obligatory Batman takes down Mr. Zsasz scene in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. well, you're gonna bring back Scarecrow, but you're not gonna bring back Zaz.
Right?
I
And the
mean, there's a
actor
reason you
looks
can't
so
bring back the
good.
Joker, but
I mean, I feel like you could do a lot of interesting parallels with Zaz and with what this Batman is trying to learn. But yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Batman can't have any love interest where she doesn't know that he's Batman.
Yeah.
I don't tell people I'm Batman. I just do weird return lines that you might remember saying.
Yeah, but he is super theatrical, and that goes into like he's
Yeah.
kind of embracing that he's Batman all the time, and
Yeah.
I like it better if they didn't remember saying it and they're like, what? It's me, Bruce.
Yeah. And see,
I'm
that would be a
Batman.
big problem when we get to Rises, because I hate that speech he gives Gordon about the coat over the shoulder and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dan has already made fun of that.
Touched on that a little bit.
Yes,
People already are probably mad at us for even bringing
Never
that up.
did learn to mind your surroundings.
Mind your surroundings.
God, I could just quote Christian Bale all day.
He's
You're unprofessional, man.
Dan, you do that already, though.
I know.
You just don't.
I do that. I've done that in every video I've ever been on Geekvolution, I believe. Flying on rooftops or.
Yeah, I'm flying on rooftop, or he's flying. Whatever. I love that line. It's hilarious.
It's pretty great.
Did we ever talk? We didn't talk. We talked about preemptively the shaky cam fighting, but we didn't really land on it. I don't think when we.
Actually, once we got to it, I wasn't even paying attention to it. Yeah, you're right.
You were too busy trying to figure out what happened to Stice. Stice?
I was too busy trying to take up for Rachel, who I'm liking less and less as I'm watching this. Steve is talking,
Man.
but I will say, Steve, that I mean, we don't have much time to talk about this now, but I do want to mention just real quick, put a pin in this. We can talk about it later. That there is maybe kind of an interesting thing where Rachel's whole the philosophy of like it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. Well, I guess I just directly quoted it. In a way that kind of goes into a little bit of the conviction will thing.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but I think it's interesting that there is a parallel to be made there, and she and Gordon and Ra's al Ghul have like totally opposite views of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Batman. Again, it goes to the content thing again, but it's just a matter of that's philosophical exposition. That's not a character.
No, I get that, but you can understand why she would have issues with what Bruce Wayne's doing when she doesn't know that he's Batman.
Oh no, that's totally fair. It's just I wish there was a personality that went with that worldview.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's good. Everything she says is important and vital, but it's not a character thing. It's philosophical exposition.
Well, and the thing is, like, Bruce Wayne becomes so real to me that stuff is kind of easy to overlook. You'll notice if you go back and watch my rewind that I don't talk about hardly any of the supporting cast in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And because I'm focused so much on this as a character study. Okay, talk about the train stuff, because now we're there.
Okay, yes, I was about to say. So the train stuff is amazing, and the train scene is partly why I can't watch Batman Begins without watching Dark Knight immediately. Because this is very much not a complete story yet. Bruce deciding to kill Ra's al Ghul has immediate consequences when we get to Dark Knight, and he didn't actually learn about who he is or what his method is until he has to save the Joker. So basically, the rough idea, and I love that Nolan makes this as literal as possible, but the basic idea is that whenever you're trying to learn about basic philosophy or basic moral philosophy, everyone always uses the trolley car dilemma, which is there's a runaway trolley car, there's a lever, and it's about to hit 5 guys. And if you pull the lever, it goes on another track and it kills 1 guy. So what do you choose, the 1 person or the 5 people? And there's another variation of it, but the main idea is that there's a distance between you pulling the lever and the car just doing something by its own mechanisms. That if you don't save the 5 people, there's not inherently anything wrong with that because you didn't set the car off. And what we get here with Batman choosing to let Ra's al Ghul die is that very distinction. Because deontology is really dangerous. That's the philosophy Batman utilizes. The whole idea of there's inherently moral good things like don't killing people to stand for. It's a very dangerous thing to make in practice because you can make a whole bunch of brief distinctions, and the list goes on and on. Of say, well, it's not. It's different when I don't kill a person, but I knowingly let them go to their death, or it's okay because I didn't foster this mentality. That's just the way the person is. It's very hard to get a perfect ground of who do you let die versus who do you save without being forced to save everybody. And Bruce here pulls that very distinction. He decides that he's going to let Ra's al Ghul die, but that's the wrong choice. And it works for him in the moment, but he realizes it's the wrong choice when you get to Dark Knight. The name for it is escaping me because I haven't gone back and read my papers on it. But the name for the distinction he's pulling escapes me. But the very idea is the act itself matters more than the mentality of the act. And here Batman is going very much with the mentality, and he learns later that it's about the act itself. And because he's a Kantian, and because it's about setting an example, even though Ra's al Ghul is on this train by his own machinations, he still should not let him die.
Yeah, because if you have the ability to save the person and you don't, you didn't kill them, but it's still immoral.
Exactly. And then you can go on and say, okay, well, what does a person have to do?
You can't say Batman killed him, but what would the difference be between his throwing that batarang at his face right then and then the train explodes?
Exactly. You can even pull another line and say, well, okay, what does a person have to do in order to be completely innocent and for you to save them? Do they have to ask for help? Is there a prerequisite? Yeah. What's the situation? What's the stipulation that differentiates an innocent person that deserves saving from a non-innocent person? And if you always pull that distinction, why are you bothering to save the city at all?
Well, it's kind of that basic Spider-Man power responsibility thing, really.
Yeah, kind of.
Because it's like, well, you're standing there, and that's a human being, and that person has a right to live, regardless of the fact that they're Ra's al Ghul and they want to kill everybody.
Yeah. It all goes back to a selfish idea to an extent of you would save someone because in that moment you would want them to save you.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's why this has to be about ultimately Batman trying to set an example for people.
Exactly. It's the first version of the categorical imperative.
Which I think would be, and I think the distinction is that would be it's a completely different case if, say, Ra's al Ghul is in that scene like holding somebody at gunpoint.
Yeah. That'd be a very different choice.
And I'm not saying that Batman, would necessarily like kill a person to save someone in the moment, because that's not a thing we see him do, really.
Yeah, it's something that there's like a version of that when we get to Dark Knight, when we get to the two fairies. Because like I mentioned earlier, there's two versions of the trolley car dilemma. This movie deals with the first half of it. Dark Knight deals with the second half of it.
But I mean, a lot of people would agree with me if I were to say that, and that's why the enemy Man of Steel is really interesting to talk about. That there are times where it does feel like the right choice to kill someone to save somebody else.
Yeah. And I mean, Man of Steel's got lots of issues because at that point, that movie's more about might makes right than it is about hope, and it doesn't realize it.
I love that the most of the return lines revolve around Earl. With it's all a bit technical, and didn't you get the memo? Everything, but it's what I am underneath. That stuff. That's like the only other return line that doesn't involve Earl.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
But I think that's mostly because he's just kind of repeating his speech back to him.
Yeah, he's the comeuppance character. He got all the comeuppance.
Well, and also I just thought of this, but this is Bruce kind of trying to redeem himself in fixing his father's legacy that he's kind of been letting go to rot, and Earl represents that whole thing.
Yeah.
Where he's allowing that to happen too for his own gain, and Bruce is doing that for the gain of Batman, which he thinks is necessary, but it's not right.
Exactly. And of course, those are, again, two very different things and stuff that goes more into it when you go to Dark Knight.
And then the question, of course, is can those two things ever be really balanced? And the answer at the end of the day is no. That's why he's got to quit being Batman at some point.
Yeah.
What a tease.
At some point, yeah, I hated that.
She's literally saying, I started to hope, and then, oh, well, sorry, whoops.
Oh, man!
No!
Oh, man! I thought
No, make a mental note. I swore. I'm sorry.
We are 12 minutes from the
No! And kisses him. And
We got
kisses him.
one scene left.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
end. So I said earlier that I take up for her to a degree, and I do mean to a degree. Theater, that is such a tease. I could not believe she did that to him.
And then I saw your mask. so mean.
I'm gonna make out with you. I had hope, and also she's a character that's supposed to totally represent hope.
Yeah.
Kind of the point of her, and then she starts making out with him, and she's like, I don't know, maybe someday.
And then doesn't even go through with it. And then doesn't even go through with it in the next movie.
And like the look on his face when the first time I saw it in the theater, I read as, "You're just screwing with me right now." Like
friend zoned. They're holding hands.
Oh yeah, and then he still got this look on his face, like, you know what, just stop talking to me. And then he starts smiling. I guess it's not what I thought it was. Okay, but oh man, like that would have worked okay maybe if he had started kissing her and then she like didn't push him away or anything and then said that. But like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think that they're about to show the flashback again. They showed that 2 or 3 times in this movie. Was it 3 or 2?
I think it's 2.
I always think it's 3. I don't know why.
It's a good flashback, though. I do like that stethoscope's there.
Yeah, Dan is fixated on return lines.
That's another one.
And that's great. I mean, that is such a really cool way to very like deliberately and kind of like really obviously, but not in a bad way, show the resolution of a character arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of textbook.
Yeah.
I also like the whole East Wing thing. One thing that I was always really disappointed with these movies, ultimately, when we get to the end of it, is we never have a proper souped-up Batcave.
No. Well, I mean, it's pretty souped up. It's pretty souped up in Rises. I mean, it's been obviously not been used as much, but it's a lot more fun.
That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, he has that cool lifting platform thing.
Yeah, you got the lifting platform. He's even got a cage with the costume.
Yeah.
Kind of Batcavey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, and it's glass. It's like a glass case.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the real problem is that there's no dinosaur in Giant Penny.
Look, I'm not expecting that stuff.
No,
but I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. I don't know. Even the bunker to me felt like more of a like superhero headquarters.
My issue with the bunker was that it was just way too big with too little in it. Like, there's one focused area where everyone sits, but it's way too massive for that.
Now, again, I'm not saying that it ever would have made sense to have a super souped-up Batcave. I'm just saying that, like, we don't get to play in this world long enough to get there in a way that it would make any sense. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm just saying, it would have been a fun thing to see. I don't know how you work it in with the stories they told.
It could have been fun if we had a version of Gotham Knight of anthology stories between Dark Knight and Rises where he's just Batman.
And of course, we talked over the escalation line. That's one of the big important themes that it's impossible to watch these and not talk about. The idea that Batman is you have to ask the question if he's creating some of these problems, but you understand why he continues doing what he does and thinks that it's necessary. He might have he might have, and I don't know that it's fair to say that he actually created the Joker, although when you watch Dark Knight, I can kind of see the idea that maybe he didn't put on the makeup and stuff until Batman showed up.
Yeah.
But I guess there's no way to really know what he was doing before that.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan had a very specific backstory for Joker in mind that isn't just his delusions. That may have been like right around the time of Begins, but we don't really know how much of those influenced each other.
Yeah.
Like, we know he was supposed to be an ex-soldier, but we don't know more than that.
I didn't know that. But I mean, when Gordon says, take this guy, and he shows him the Joker card, that gives us kind of the idea that it's maybe supposed to be he didn't become theatrical until Batman, and then you have the whole, you changed things and stuff. But that's just Gordon's assumption there.
Yeah, I mean, he says Joker's theatrical, but then when we get to the opening of Dark Knight, they're all kind of surprised by Joker wearing quote-unquote war paint. So yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. This also started that big trend of not getting the titles until the very end.
Yes,
Yeah.
which bugs me. Because I just sat through a 2.5 hour movie. What's it called?
I love it in this. I'm fine with it. And the reason I love it is because we get the origin and then the word begins pops up. And I didn't like the title until I saw the movie. And it still is a hokey sounding title to me. As much as I love this movie, it's got that alliteration thing, and it's a sentence that kind of is the synopsis of the movie
It's a
in the
phrase.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's a sentence. It has a noun and a verb. Batman Begins. It should have a period at the end. No, Batman Begins. He's doing a thing. It's in the present. He's doing it right now, but it's a sentence. But Steve, when I saw it in the theater, I actually thought getting that title at the very end was genius, because it's like you're watching the preamble for an entire Batman universe. Yep, did you see it too?
Yeah. So on Netflix, when you're done, it's suggesting Gotham.
Imagine
Oh, I've got that too.
Episode of Gotham.
Well, it's suggesting Gotham,
Let's
the
do it,
Golden
guys.
Child, and Robin Hood. I don't know what Robin Hood and Golden Child have to do with this movie.
Golden Child.
Well, you see, they're thinking Robin Hood is a thing that you need before you have Green Arrow, and Arrow is a Batman show.
Which Robin Hood was it? Which Robin Hood was it? I clicked away.
I clicked away too.
Robin Hood.
Morgan Freeman is the tie there, probably.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
probably why. Yeah.
Forgot he's in that movie.
Yep.
I
And
forget if Freeman is also faking a weird accent in that.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
I've seen
it's
that.
been
I
a
might
long
actually
time
watch
since.
it now.
That's that movie. I just remember that line.
I didn't like it at all.
I'll pry his heart out with a spoon. Why a spoon? Why a spoon, sir? Because it's dull. I like that line. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this movie. You know what? I think it's funny that Nolan is so he's talked about a real movie doesn't have after credit sequences. Like, he's said that. And like I mean that end sequence practically is an after credit sequence. I mean, like, for a Marvel standards, I mean, it's like teasing the next movie potentially, and it has those elements of it. I mean, it does have a very important, the whole escalation setup, but
Yeah.
it feels like an after the credit sequence to me. I felt like the movie was over when it faded out from Wayne Manor. It has that big punch like Dark Knight does, but it feels like I don't know.
The escalation theme is so important, though.
Oh no, I know. I definitely agree with that. I'm just saying the Joker setup.
I get that, but that is a, just because it's a reference to a thing they might do later doesn't make it the same kind of teasy thing you get in a lot of after credit scenes.
Yeah.
Where most after credit scenes aren't things that tie a lot of ideas together and are really important for the whole movie. When they are, I lose my mind that I had to wait for the whole credits and might not have seen it.
Yeah.
Because it always feels like an after credit scene is like a thing that's not really part of the movie.
Yeah. Because a lot of people will miss it.
And and not just that, but like, you've been taken out of the story. We're looking at 5 minutes of people's names.
Yeah.
Like, the story is, you have said, the story is over. And so when you have an after credit scene, it's not part of the movie. It's a thing that's there to tease you for the next thing. Steve, one of my least favorites is the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I was about to mention, when you get the very last thing you see,
that should be part of the movie.
That should be the end of the movie.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how exactly you'd transition to it. I don't know. Be creative people. You're making a movie, but that's you don't put that in an after credit scene.
Yeah.
And I don't even like mid credit scenes, because a lot of like, the movie's not over. We wait, like, I don't know. So I get why he said that. I don't like that he went far enough to say a real movie.
Yeah.
I know we're taking this out of context of an interview. I never read all of that. I don't know. I just heard that. I just heard him say that.
I mean, I may or may not have been paraphrasing as well. It's something along those lines.
No, I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair to say, it's suddenly not because the implication is we shouldn't even count it as a real thing, a real piece of art, if it does that, because it's too gimmicky. Lots of movies do stupid gimmicky things in the middle of them.
This one does it too. We got the Tumblr scene.
Including movies he's made. So, yeah, that's not fair. But to say that it ought to be part of the movie and you feel cheated or like it's gimmicky because it's in the middle of look at a bunch of people's names, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, to go back to the Joker thing, I don't really have an issue with that being like an extra tag on or anything, because I mean, that's exactly how year one ends. That's the final page of year one, is Gordon and Batman on the rooftop talking about the next guy they're going to face is the Joker. And this movie takes a lot of scenes directly from that comic. I think it's a nice wrap up.
We didn't talk about that. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too because I made the stupid case or point a few years ago when we did this because I didn't know nearly as much about Batman as I do now, and I still don't know enough. You can tell every time I talk with Steve that that's the case. But I thought that that Commissioner Loeb was a nod to Jeff Loeb, and it's not. I forgot he was in Year One. That's just a coincidence.
Yeah. Jeff Loeb, or not Jeff Loeb, Commissioner Loeb had lots of comic book stories.
Commissioner Jeff Loeb.
Yeah, Commissioner Jeff Loeb. I mean, at this point, I think people might just give him the first name of Jeff and make it a reference, but it didn't start that way.
Nope. But they're spelled the same way. I mean, I don't know how that became a more common name.
No, it's weird.
It does not sound like a thing a lot of people have, but...
See, my favorite thing about the Dark Knight trilogy is when the final scene of Dark Knight Rises, when they reveal that it was Stice that was coordinating everything. He really held that Batman grabbing him and taking him away against him. That was pretty amazing. Stice. Anyway.
I thought it was going a little too far, though, when right after that he takes a bite of falafel. I'm like, you were in that.
Yeah, I mean, and Flash shows up and he was his partner in crime.
Yeah. When I saw this the first time, I really wanted Flash's name to be Flask.
Yeah.
And I thought that at first when I first watched it, because obviously that guy is constantly drunk on the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? His name's Detective Flask.
It'd be the Star Wars thing of the name is what you are.
Yeah. And I mean, you have a lot of that in Batman.
Yeah, to an extent.
You have like Victor Freeze and
Tempest Fugit.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of characters' names that either sort of reflect their personality or just straight up exactly what they are.
Edward Nygma, although to be fair, Nygma's not his real last name.
Oh, it's not?
No, he makes up that name later.
Well, according to what continuity? We've rebooted, DC a million times.
Before New 52.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But that's cool. But then you almost want that to be the case for like all the other, like, why would we do that when we have so many villains that just were born with that name? I mean, that's silly.
It's a little bit silly. What was his original name? I'm trying to think.
Did you notice that Gotham spells Nygma differently than the comics do?
Oh, does it?
Yeah, one's with a Y and one's with an I.
Oh, that's interesting.
I want to say it's Y in the comics and it's I in the TV show. I forget.
What does the animated series use? Was that a Y?
I think it's a Y.
It showed the title again once the credits were done.
Oh, it did.
Batman Begins.
Although that might have also been as well. It just wants to remind you what you just
have been watching Batman Begins.
Just so you know. We didn't even talk at all. And this is a thing I usually talk about with this movie. There's a lot of things that I usually talk about that I didn't bring up because we were
Nashton. That was his name.
We were on some rolls.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of different things, and Steve had a lot of things to bring to the table that I hadn't necessarily considered before. But we didn't talk about how this is, at least in my mind, this is kind of like the definitive superhero origin picture. And I mean, I'm constantly Well, okay, 1978 Superman does it well too, but you've got a. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
I lost you for a minute there.
I'm here. I'm just getting relaxed.
Oh no, that's cool. It's just like anyway. Real quick before we finish, I've always kind of seen this as one of, if not the definitive superhero origin picture, because there really is a story here, and it was a thing that was really worth putting on film because famously those in between years had not been really dealt with much in the comics before. Obviously, a ton now.
Yeah, now it's all over the place. Before this, the biggest thing we get is Legends of the Dark Knight, which all that really does is say Batman's only been Batman for a year, and it's not really the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're always told famously that it's 7 years, and he went off and he trained with a whole bunch of different people, and you'll get flashbacks to things and stuff, but we never really just totally fleshed that out.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we still don't have like a straight up Batman 6-issue mini or a 12-issue maxi that's just him training. I feel like that would be the obvious thing to do.
It's really strange that hasn't been done. But I don't know. I think this, covers that really, really well. I like that we got it in a movie first and we didn't have a TV show about it.
Yeah, I mean, they were going to.
That almost happened. Well, yeah, that was supposed to be Smallville.
Yep. It was going to be called Bruce Wayne, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I've read that pilot script. It's really interesting.
I haven't read it yet. I kind of wanted it to get picked up, but then it didn't. It became Arrow.
Well, what do you mean?
Just a joke.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Fair enough. I can never tell with you.
And then Stice came out.
Yeah.
Now you know it's a
Watch
joke.
Thanks,
I'm sorry,
thanks,
for the
Dan.
last minute I've been thinking Steve Baxi reads a Maxi, and then it just, because he was seeing Maxi and Minnie, and then it was just, I'm looking at pictures of Christopher Nolan and thinking about that and listening to you guys talk.
Dan's just completely distracted now, and he can't.
I'm looking at this weird picture of Christopher Nolan right now where he's holding a glass. Very strange. It's weird.
He's trying to solidify himself as the next James Bond director. He's got to be classy.
I would love for him to direct a James Bond movie.
I think it'd be interesting.
I feel like he would bring in so many things that he did already with the Batman movies. Like, if he does a Bond movie, I really want to see him do Skyhook again.
Yeah.
Skyhook.
Because he pulled that just directly out of Thunderball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, everybody, thanks as always for listening. We sure appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed our the second commentary I've made on Batman Begins, but a very different commentary. And thank you guys for everything you always bring to the table. Dan, thanks for joining us. It's been a long time since we've had you on anything.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm excited to do Dark Knight when we roll around to do that soon.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. It's gonna be really soon. Thanks a lot, folks. And Steve, thanks for making me question everything I've ever thought about this movie.
Hooray! I succeeded. If I can make you doubt anything, then my job is complete.
Wow, now I gotta start questioning your morality a little bit. I don't know.
I remember convincing you guys to like an episode of Gotham, and you did it. You guys, I wasn't even there. Remember, that was the episode I wasn't there. I had video things, and by the end of it, Steve was like, I really did not like this episode when I watched it, but after talking about it, I think it has a lot of valid elements. It was hilarious. That made me so happy.
It was on screen for 3 minutes and wasn't even in the call.
And I was just talking about how much I liked it, and you guys were like, yeah, actually, maybe right.
We were glad we led with you, because at first we were both really down on it. We listened to you, we were like, huh.
Yeah.
I gotta go back and find that Gotham discussion episode.
I think it was episode 2 or 3, something. It was pretty early on.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days, and I say that because it was fun talking to you guys about that show, but also because that was back when there was a lot of things to like about that show.
Yeah, that was back when I think I liked it.
Yeah. We always only thought we liked it, though.
Yeah.
We were never real sure.
Yeah, that's the thing about reviewing something right after it happens. Is you don't have time for it to really set in.
Yeah, and you don't have time to, see how it affects things, and yeah. Well, anyway. Once again, folks, thanks a lot for listening. We will see you again very shortly for the Dark Knight commentary, which I have not done a commentary on yet. And it's been a long time coming, so that'll be a lot of fun. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and this was Steve Baxi.
See you, everybody.
And DanzNewz.
I don't have a cool sign-off.
We'll work on that. Yeah. Your sign-off should be either he's flying on rooftops.
I'm Batman. Sorry,
or it should be what? You don't like they don't like falafel? See you later, folks.
Bye.
Bye.